This blonde dude was standing in the bathroom, staring deep into the mirror, and couldn't wrap his head around the fact that it was him in the reflection. The reflection was a real dude named James, who had no clue who was staring back at him, and was tripping out over how much they looked alike. His thoughts were all jumbled, the fictional character was blending with reality, and the line between them was getting totally blurred. Then it hit James, a memory flashed. Standing before him was the heir to the great Granfell clan, Claudie Arfe Romeo. This guy was a character James had cooked up like 12 years ago, back in sophomore year of high school. Romeo was supposed to be a demon hunter, a strong and proud noble from a high-class family. The kid was basically trying to create a better version of himself, the kind of person he wished he'd been born as. This character wasn't some complicated, layered thing. He was a burst of delusions of grandeur, a mashup of everything that makes a powerful fighter against evil. Romeo was created to be a character in a super popular, maybe even legendary, virtual reality game about another world. But on the day the game shut down, its creator mysteriously vanished, and nobody knew where he went or why he bailed on the project without saying a word. The CEO of the company vanished, and his game, Arcana, suddenly became reality. Monsters started pouring out of rifts all over the world, and humanity was on the brink. But along with the monsters, people appeared, synced with their in-game characters. They called these people players, and they could use crazy superpowers to beat the monsters and save the world. As a kid, James looked up to these players and dreamed of being a brave and famous hero just like them. But even back then, he knew his powers wouldn't be that impressive, and his family couldn't afford a VR rig anyway. James's dad's business went bust, and his mom, bless her heart, barely made enough to support them. Trying to find a better life and new opportunities, James had no choice but to dive into the game. Less than a year later, our main guy awakened. But to his dismay, he awakened as a character he made back in high school. Granfell Claudie Arfe Romeo was an over-the-top, melodramatic do-gooder with a tragic backstory. Everything seemed normal. But then one fateful day at the ball, all of Romeo's relatives fell victim to a demon, and he was the only one who made it out alive. Now, all alone, he decided to become a demon hunter and make every bloodthirsty monster pay for what they did to his family. Back in high school, James seriously thought of Romeo as his alter ego. James was freaking out. He had no idea how to keep up with his daily grind looking and acting like this. Even the thoughts James was having felt totally different from the ones Romeo was saying out loud. Most players said the changes after synchronization were pretty minimal. James figured he'd better not show up to work looking like this, so he'd have to become a player. He decided to start by digging up some info about the game. There was tons of info online, but it was all the same stuff. High-level fighters rake in serious cash for closing rifts. The situation was messed up and dangerous, but Romeo wasn't scared. He was ready to step up and handle whatever crap came his way. First things first, he needed to find out what demon hunters were up to these days. The weird thing was, there was barely any info about it, just news reports. One article said that all the demon hunters in Akshan were wiped out, 0 survivors, which is why there's so little info on that class. But hardly anyone picked them to play, because their stats sucked. Leveling was a grind, and you had to max out their skills with daily chores. The one thing they were undeniably better at than any other class was fighting demons. In the game, the demon hunter role seemed vague and confusing, and the class itself seemed kinda useless and weak. James was stuck wondering what to do next, since demon-slaying quests were rare and there was no one to learn from. On some website, a user posted about a new update that was added to the game, and it included new demons. Now demons pop up among regular monsters, and their powers are boosted, including mind-screwing and possession. James started wondering why the other demon hunters hadn't dealt with them. Was he the only hunter left? The main character didn't know if he should step in or stop the sync for his own safety. But then he heard his inner child, calling him weak. Little James insisted that no demonic temptations, trials, or deceptions could touch Romeo's pride or stand in his way. The inner voice convinced James to continue the merge and encouraged him to keep fighting. With the latest upgrade, the body count spiked. Innocent bystanders were dropping like flies. Seeing that, Romeo flashed back to his family, and he swore he'd personally send every last demon to the fiery depths. It had been years since the great disaster. A lot was lost, but people managed to get back on their feet. The streets were buzzing again, and everyone adjusted to the new world. But evil never sleeps, and it's always lurking. The negative vibes from everyone getting together again were like a buffet for the demons. The battle group leader, decked out in heavy armor, was itching for his whole squad to show up. Romeo, brimming with confidence, was hauling ass toward the group, even though he was a little late to the party. Team captain introduced himself, then presented Romeo to the group as the new guy. The dude's eyes locked onto a shimmering purple portal, what the players called a rift. Only players can see it. Regular people can't even touch the thing. Romeo checked it out. This portal was good for players level 35 to 40, perfect for him at level 55. He'd read that the average level for Rift Raiders was 200. This guy's got a long grind ahead of him. Lucky for him, not everyone levels up super high. That's how Romeo found a decent team. Hank the tank, Sam the melee fighter, and Bella the mage. The leader, Jack, said another group already went in, and they had to move out in 5. Romeo was nervous and wary about the fight, but he tried to keep a poker face for the team. He was worried about the rift's disruption level. If it hits 100%, all the monsters bust through into the real world. Jack told everyone to huddle up and asked if they were ready to roll. The team was all in. Everyone was being so cool. James felt like he had to say something to pump them up. So, Romeo told the team they had nothing to sweat, 'cause he was with them. The team stepped through the portal and found themselves inside an abandoned warehouse. It was suspiciously quiet. Not a single monster or person around, even though another team had come through here before. Romeo, sensing something was off, started cautiously looking around, ready for anything. Suddenly, blood-red Knoll eyes appeared from the darkness, getting ready to pounce on the team. Jack, the team captain, was the first to charge into the thick of the fight. Romeo watched the scene unfold, sizing up the team's chances of winning. The main character hung back, since his abilities were pretty useless in this particular brawl. As he stood there, trying to decide which weapon to use, an arrow came out of nowhere and was fired straight at him. Turns out, in the most unassuming spot behind the pillars, there was a huge ambush of fighters, and they were itching for a fight. Caught completely off guard, the team scrambled to set up a defensive line. Meanwhile, Jack was hauling ass off the battlefield, ditching his team like a coward at the worst possible moment. Sam, absolutely livid, was screaming at the captain that he needed to get back here and help them hold the line. Because Sam was so distracted, he wasn't watching his back, and an enemy was charging him at full speed. Time seemed to freeze as an arrow whizzed past the guy's face and pierced the attacking monster right in the back. To everyone's shock, it was Romeo who came to the rescue in this tough spot. The battle was raging. Monsters were attacking from every direction. Hank was fighting bravely, but even so, 2 monsters managed to slip past him. 2 bloodthirsty monsters, swinging their swords, were charging towards the helpless sorceress, who was frozen in place with terror. Bella, paralyzed by fear, didn't know where to run or what to do. Her mind was blank. Romeo appeared behind the sorceress, calming her down by saying he'd deal with the breakthrough and ordering her to use the strongest spell she knew. The hunter's arrow hit its mark, stopping the monsters dead in their tracks. Sam kept holding the line, protecting the sorceress as she prepared to unleash a devastating blow on their enemies. Bella was ready to cast the spell and ordered her allies to scatter. Blasts of fire erupted from the sorceress's hands, striking all the attackers. Then the fire blasts turned into a massive explosion, finishing off the remaining monsters. Romeo, noticing Bella was shaken, told her to help their allies while he checked out the battlefield. The sorceress, grateful for his support, nodded and ran to assist her friends. The main character, staring at the corpses of their enemies and the arrows lying next to them, wondered if he could reuse them. After the battle, Bella gave a healing potion to Hank, but Sam didn't need it. Overflowing with rage, he couldn't contain his emotions. But suddenly, out of the gloomy darkness of the long corridor, as if nothing had happened, Jack's figure appeared, seemingly clueless about the gravity of the situation. Sam went ballistic on the captain, tearing into him for being a gutless coward who abandoned the crew. Out of nowhere, Jack just lost it, laughing like a total maniac. Sam, expecting a completely different reaction, got even more pissed and laid into him even harder about what happened. The captain's eyes were wild, totally unhinged. He started trash-talking the crew, calling them pathetic and brainless. Romeo, noticing something seriously off about Jack's behavior, started to suspect he wasn't who he said he was. Everything pointed to the guy being a demon, crazy, strong, and powerful. The demon's eyes blazed blood red. He smirked, and with a voice dripping with contempt, confirmed Romeo's worst fears. The crew was totally lost, not understanding what the heck was going on. They didn't know how to react, or what to do next. Hank couldn't believe what he was seeing and hearing, refusing to accept that it was really a demon standing in front of him. Then boom, the whole crew vanished, and darkness closed in all around him. Suddenly, Hank heard horrifying sounds coming from his team, and turning around, he saw a gruesome sight. Bella, covered head to toe in blood, reached out to him, begging for help. The demon who'd orchestrated all of this smirked, reveling in his victory and the mental weakness of his allies. Romeo, filled with determination and courage, didn't hesitate for a second before charging at the demon. He sprinted forward, driving his blade into the enemy's chest, but the armor was too strong to even scratch him. The demon, with a sly grin, warned that any damage inflicted on him could kill the possessed human. Romeo wasn't surprised in the slightest. He was prepared for that, and was already calculating his next moves in the fight. Trying to pierce the armor and find a weak spot, he struck another blow. this time at the enemy's back. That didn't do much good either, since the armor was unbelievably tough. However, as a result of that attack, the main character's fighting power increased in the heat of battle. The demon went on the counterattack, but Romeo dodged it, taking no damage. The demon, feeling invincible, got cocky and took a dagger right to the face. Romeo found a weak spot in the armor and slashed the demon's face with his blade. A thick black goo immediately poured from the possessed guy's eyes, meaning the damage was serious. The demon dropped to his knees, writhing in pain because the dagger was silver, the most dangerous weapon against demons. Romeo, towering over the demon, taunted him to keep fighting instead of crying about it. Something happened inside the demon as Jack started to break free, trying to remember how he got possessed in the first place. Just a couple of months ago, after another fight, Jack was home, hanging out with his brother, Christoph. Christoph was worried about his brother, who'd taken a beating in the last battle, and suggested he pack it in. People on the street, spotting Jack, would only ask him about his brother and his heroic deeds. It really got to him, because he didn't want to be a loser. He just wanted to be someone his brother could be proud of. Because of these fears and insecurities, the demon chose Jack as his prey. Jack didn't get what was happening or who he was dealing with. He tried his best to fight this crazy power, but he was too weak. The demon consumed the kid, and all Jack could do was watch the evil dude's actions. Jack watched as the demon tricked a group into a deadly trap. He couldn't just stand by and watch. He tried everything to kick the demon out and wake up, but it was no use. But then, a sudden jolt knocked Jack's consciousness loose, and he knew freedom was close. The demon was freaking out, trying to trick Romeo into thinking he'd killed Jack along with him. But our main man's dealt with demons and their shady tricks before. He knows how they act and can smell a lie a mile away. Taking advantage of the demon's distraction, Jack restrained him, making him unable to move before the final blow. Romeo unleashes one final devastating blow on the weakened demon. The demon screams its lungs out, and with that scream, Jack is released, while the demon vanishes for good. The guy collapses flat on his back, completely drained after the long fight. Finally coming to, he's horrified by what just happened to him, and then overwhelmed by shame and regret that he ever let it inside him in the first place. The team gathers around their captain, all genuinely worried about how he's doing. Romeo snaps him back to reality, reminding him what he said before the fight. The team's good as long as he's with them. The main character tells the team, who are all ears, not to forget their pride and to stop being afraid of demons, because that emotion just fuels them. Next, Romeo checked the loot, but nothing worthwhile dropped after the fight with the demon. Later, back home, Jack showed his brother an article online about the battle, mentioning a strong team member who saved a possessed man. Jack asked his brother to recruit this guy into the guild, because he saved his life. Christoph, a high-ranking guild leader, was floored by the news about his brother being possessed. What surprised Christoph even more was that his brother agreed to a position as an analyst on his team, something he'd always refused before. Jack, with a mischievous glint in his voice, accused his brother of not believing him, but he was dead serious about becoming an analyst, having realized his limitations and a more suitable role on the team. Christoph listened intently to his brother's reflections on rethinking his life, and he was dying to know who had influenced him so much. Then he started wondering who this person could be, since their mental defenses must be off the charts to resist a demon's attacks. Plus, they used a dagger as a weapon, not magic, which doesn't fit any class he knows. Jack was about to bring proof that this wasn't some made-up story, but his brother cut him off, saying he believed him. And to back him up, Christoph reminded him that Jack was the one who helped him become who he is today. That's why, without hesitation, Christoph drew up a contract for the new member and brought it to his brother for approval. Jack felt a little awkward from all the heartfelt praise and mumbled a shy thanks. Christoph suggested he take a look at the contract and give his thoughts on it. After reading through all the terms, Jack's eyes went wide with surprise. After that fight with the demon, Romeo's level shot up, a whole 12 points. That was totally unexpected. Romeo didn't sweat the small stuff, but James was stoked and already figuring out how to spend those points. James was planning on chilling in bed, but Romeo had other things in mind. He spotted a single speck of dust and launched into a full-blown cleaning spree, because he hated dust and dirt. Once he finished cleaning, he wasn't even tired, so he decided to whip up dinner. Watching Romeo, James realized that besides levels and stats, there were also character settings at play, the ones he'd set himself as a kid. So, they needed to figure out what kind of talents Romeo was packing. The main character was so magically gifted, he could copy any spell after seeing it just once, and he was physically ripped too. Looking back at his childhood notes, James realized he'd only written down positive traits, like intelligence, magical talent, and a great physique. The main character decided to test if these settings affected real life, when suddenly an unknown message interrupted his thoughts. The message was from Jack, and it was super long. He said he'd recommended him to the top guild in the country and thanked him for saving him. Romeo decided to turn down the offer, since he was focused on something completely different right now. Next, he got down to testing his abilities, starting with magic video tutorials. Jack and Kristoff didn't expect Romeo to refuse their offer, and they were both totally blown away. Jack guessed that maybe the guy had already gotten a better offer from another guild. Kristoff was furious. He couldn't understand how any other guild could offer better terms. Then Jack started explaining that it could be one of the companies downtown. But Kristoff, unable to contain his emotions, yelled that nobody better step on his turf. The analyst kept rambling about how, ever since that magic tower popped up downtown, foreign guilds had been setting up shop all around it. Kristoff roared that there was no way some local guild could be offering better deals than him. Kristoff wasn't about to give up and decided to go see Romeo himself. But first he needed to get the lowdown on what the guy looked like. Jack was racking his brain trying to piece together a full description of the hunter, but all he could think of was how wise he looked. Then, a clear and concise picture of the guy flashed into Jack's mind. He looked like some fantasy aristocrat. After testing his magical abilities, it became clear that Romeo understood the fundamental principles of magic and could cast any spell that matched his rank. James was stoked with the results. Honestly, he hadn't expected anything less from Romeo. Armed with this new intel, James finally decided to start allocating points. He dumped 2 points into strength and agility, 7 into magical abilities, and 1 into luck. Romeo was totally chill. He got ready for bed and took stock of his new stats. Suddenly, he heard the chime. A notification for a new quest. Ever since the Arcana showed up in the real world, quests have been super rare. 'Cause there aren't many NPCs left. The main character was shocked. Even regular quests were a rarity, and he just got a class quest. Class quests almost never popped up in the game. They only go to one person in the entire class. Low-level players never got these. Only the best of the best got a shot at something like this. Romeo drifted back to his training days at the legendary auction base, learning the ropes of being a hunter. Reality hit hard. The city was a total wreck. Buildings were trashed, roads were busted, and the streets were buried in garbage. Training started with this weird-ass task that had nothing to do with hunting. The instructor ordered them to climb to the top of a cliff. While everyone else struggled to climb, the instructor kept ragging on the newbies. Finally, after a brutal climb, the students got an even crazier task: climb back down. But Romeo wasn't mad about what happened, because he figured the hunter needed training to toughen up his mind for fighting demons. Anyway, that's all water under the bridge. First things first, gotta figure out what this quest is all about. To deal with the chaos and damage that started when Arcana showed up in the real world, they created an association of former game devs. They react to every update that bleeds into reality, collecting and breaking down info for the players. The people working at this company are constantly grinding and pulling overtime. The staff was waiting for the latest update, about to drop from the solo dev, Raymond. The pattern was, as soon as an update hit the website, reality would change right away. And right at the end of the workday, when nobody expected it, a new update landed. The company staff were floored by what the update did to their system. They weren't ready for changes this huge. The update dropped new monsters with insane power, a brand new rift, and the worst part, a level 430 vampire demon. The staff started talking about how there wasn't a group or a single fighter out there who could take down the demon. One of them summed it up, saying it was a suicide mission and this update could wipe out all of humanity. Another employee didn't want to believe the lead developer would actually do something like this, just to destroy everyone. The guy just couldn't wrap his head around the fact that this was really happening, since the previous updates were manageable, but this one breaks the whole game. Only a miracle can help now. Romeo's quest today was just as pointless, but as tough as it was in Arcana, having to do all sorts of physical exercises multiple times a day. These exercises were brutal because he wasn't used to them, and after doing them, his whole body ached and trembled. But James got a kick out of knowing he'd finished all the tasks and checked all the boxes. Finally, today's quest was done, and Romeo, with a clear conscience and a sense of accomplishment, fell asleep waiting for the next assignment. But the next day, to the main character's utter dismay, the quest was still the same. James was beyond pissed since he was stuck with the same damn tasks, again and again. It's been a whole week, but the quest keeps looping. Finish one, and another pops up right away. After another brutal workout, Romeo was sitting there, exhausted and drenched in sweat, while James was wondering when he'd finally get a reward. Then, out of nowhere, Romeo's stats jump up. +2 to strength and agility, and it usually takes millions just to get 1 point. This news pumped up James. 'Cause if it's a repeatable quest, it'll probably keep showing up, and it'll totally be worth the effort. Romeo overheard 2 old ladies nearby talking about a new update. The main character was floored that, after this update, most guilds were backing out of the Rift Raid. Getting home, Romeo immediately checked the news. listening with a calm face to the report about a new high-level demon. James, though, wasn't so chill. All he could think about was that the demon was level 430. The news said that because the demon's level was so high, the big guilds were hesitant to participate in any future raids, since the risks were off the charts. James was freaked out, because demons are the hardest for regular players to deal with. It doesn't matter how strong you are, you're still going to be dealing with constant debuffs during the fight. James was mostly terrified of the new demon, Count Ascara, someone he couldn't even imagine fighting. But there was no way out, because a new assignment was coming up. A vampire hunt. Romeo was totally ready for this mission. Nothing scared him. He just wanted to punish those nasty creatures. According to the search results, Count Ascura's holdings were in Concord. So to get there, they first needed to head to the magic tower. Inside the tower is a portal, created with large-scale magic that allows the user to travel anywhere. Romeo, without wasting a minute, immediately started packing to be the first to reach the tower. James warned him that Concord was experiencing winter and extremely harsh weather, so he needed to wear warm clothes, but Romeo didn't listen and only took tea bags with him. Reporters were already working at the tower, waiting for the appearance of various guilds. The journalists were most eager to see the Gown Guild, as they were definitely expected to show up here. And right then, a group of players appeared with Christoph, who stood at the head of the group like a true leader. The reporters, hungry for an exclusive, swarmed the players, bombarding them with 100 questions, all shouting over each other. Christoph decided to give them a show, fueling the fire by saying he had no idea how to beat the Count. Jack tried to stop his brother, knowing that kind of info could seriously damage the guild's reputation. But the team captain kept going, also announcing he wasn't planning to share any intel with the other teams. Suddenly, all the journalists' attention shifted as a new guild appeared on the horizon. This new guild was called the Shining Ones, led by a guy named Samuel who was level 399. Seeing their rivals, Samuel smirked, picking up on their anxiety about the upcoming fight. Christoph watched the new team closely as they approached the tower. Jack tried to boost his brother's spirits, telling him not to sweat it and to take things slow and steady. Christoph remembered his brother was supposed to contact Romeo and asked him how the negotiations were going. He was also wondering if he should head to the Rift today, and maybe they could even meet up at the magic tower. Meanwhile, Romeo was on the bus heading to his destination, watching videos about magic spells. Finally, he fully grasped the magic activation process, exploring the power, interfering with it, and manifesting it. Lost in thought about spell creation, he absent-mindedly repeated what was in the video. The driver reacted quickly and asked him not to perform any spells on the bus, as it could be dangerous. Romeo said he was totally in control, but he'd definitely stop if the driver asked him to. Next, Romeo decided to check if any new skills had appeared in his stats. But there weren't any, even though they usually showed up right away. Soon, he arrived at the tower, and standing before its entrance, he gathered his thoughts to go inside, preparing for the challenges ahead. The main character was struck by how different the tower's exterior was from its interior structure. He approached the portal and felt something strange, like he could understand portal magic. He thought this magic was even easier than the fire magic he'd been using before. But then, a dude walking by wasn't watching where he was going, bumped into him, and sent him flying into the portal. Romeo chewed out his subordinate for being a klutz, and told his brother to start the team briefing. Jack showed them the rift map. It had 3 circles. The outer circle was the edge of the territory, the inner circle was the Earl's family's land, and the very center circle was their fortress. Back in Concord, reporters and TV crews were already starting to gather around that first rift. This rift was also drawing in bloggers, who were live-streaming the whole thing. The blogger tried to push the player back and threaten him because he'd found the rift first, and didn't want to lose out. Romeo, with a snarl in his voice, told the kid to step aside while he still had some patience left. Finally reaching the rift, the guy started checking it out. It was good for levels 240-270, and the damage level wasn't too bad yet. But he wasn't the only one who'd arrived. There was already some redhead going at it inside. Her crew was right on her tail, barely keeping up with their energetic leader. The redhead was Ruby, head of the Berserker Guild, level 348, and ranked in the top 100 players. It was even colder inside the rift than outside, but Romeo didn't care. He was fueled by rage. 100 angry wolves, level 230, were already waiting for him at the entrance, ready to tear anyone to shreds. Even though Romeo's level was much lower, he activated the natural enemy skill, which would help him in the fight. The main character drew his blade and promised he'd help the monsters understand what it's like to be prey. Despite being outnumbered, the Berserker gang kept fighting. The guild leader, Ruby, fought with pure desperation, ruthlessly taking down enemy after enemy. After a short rest, Ruby listened intently, trying to catch any suspicious sound that might indicate an enemy's presence. The team was incredibly drained and exhausted after that tough battle, The team leader noticed the monsters didn't seem to feel fear or even know what it was. It felt unnatural to her that none of the beasts whimpered or howled in pain. The squad instantly tensed up, listening intently to her words. They knew her intuition was razor sharp, and if she sensed danger, it was real. Suddenly, a frightened howl echoed from far away, reverberating through the whole area. Ruby, without wasting a second, bolted towards the source of the noise to figure out what was going on. Romeo tried to use his magic to enchant an arrow. First, like in training, he examined the power. Then he interfered with it, and then manifested it, releasing a fiery arrow. The arrow hit its mark, instantly turning the enemies into piles of ash. Arriving at the location where the noise came from, Ruby saw burning monster corpses, and Romeo sitting beside them. To finally warm up and regain his strength, the guy decided to take a break and brew himself a cup of tea, especially since there was plenty of fire around. Ruby was shocked and annoyed by this weirdo, whose whole vibe just didn't fit the situation. One of the team members guessed he was probably just some lost vlogger who wandered into the rift by accident. Ruby went with that and snapped at the guy, telling him to get lost because it was way too dangerous for civilians here. Romeo just ignored her and kept on sipping his tea. The girl, who was usually so confident and strong, didn't expect to get blown off like that by some random stranger. Before she could even tell him what's what, her team cut her off, yelling about enemies incoming. With each passing second, a massive undead army, thousands of ruthless warriors strong, kept marching closer to the team. Ruby, being the skilled and experienced commander she was, quickly and clearly ordered her warriors to take up their battle positions. The battle kicked off, and every member of the team worked in sync, trying to take down as many monsters as possible. Ruby was the most experienced and badass fighter on the team. Every swing of her sword was precise and deadly, leaving a trail of fallen enemies. But besides the melee undead, up above, archer monsters were waiting in ambush, aiming hundreds of sharp arrows at the team. Out of the corner of her eye, Ruby noticed the stranger was still just sitting there with his cup of tea. But Romeo wasn't just sitting around. He was figuring out if he could pull off a magic spell right now. The archer leader signaled his subordinates, and they immediately began firing on the hero team, unleashing one deadly arrow after another. It seemed like the end was here. The arrows whistled through the air, hurtling towards the enemy at incredible speed. Romeo decided to try and tap into the power inside the thermos, to mess with it and unleash it. Since using a skill like that requires a ton of power, which the main character couldn't handle, he'd black out. But if this spell wasn't a skill, then it just might work. He decided to take a chance and test this theory, even though it was risky. The thermos was converted into energy, and that energy began to split into different parts. Ruby was ready to say goodbye to her life, but a minute later, she was still alive. The thermos morphed into a massive stone wall, deflecting all the arrows and saving the team's lives. The team captain was totally shocked by what happened. She'd never seen anything like it, only heard rumors about alchemy. Romeo shot down the alchemy theory, saying he used actual magic. The team was whispering amongst themselves, guessing who this mysterious stranger could be. Some even thinking he was an alchemist. From all this, our hero realized he could change the shape of objects if he put enough force into it. Which, yeah, kinda looked like alchemy. But there was no time to chill, because more freaky monsters were already charging towards them from the other side of the wall. Bloodthirsty undead, armed with blades, were rapidly closing in on the guild members, ready to attack. They were ruthless and determined to wipe them out. Romeo, dripping with sarcasm, said they'd have to postpone tea time and start fighting. The group of players, armed with swords and shields, charged into battle, their faces set with determination and courage, their eyes burning with the fire of war. Ruby, also rushing towards the enemies, ordered the main character to stick with the team for his own safety. Romeo, though, had other ideas. He pulled a magic arrow and bow from behind his back. On the battlefield, one of our guys was down, needed a healer, and some poor sap was holding him when a monster came charging from behind. The main character reacted instantly, sending an arrow straight into the enemy's chest. The guy who was saved was blown away by the hunter's skill and courage. Wasting no time, the main character drew back his bow again, ready to fire another arrow. Ruby was shocked that the archer's arrow was on fire. Turns out this stranger was an alchemist, an archer, and a mage all in one. Finally, all the enemies were taken care of, and the players, exhausted from the hard battle, could finally catch their breath. The captain complimented her team on a job well done and started watching the hunter. Romeo was getting on her nerves because he wouldn't give her a straight answer, and his outfit was just... ugh. It kinda stung to admit that they might be worm food if it wasn't for him, so she was thinking about thanking him for the assist. As if sensing her gaze, the guy turned and started watching her back. Ruby, blushing like crazy, spun around, desperately trying to hide her feelings from him. Romeo kept staring at her, and she couldn't figure out why he was giving her the eye like that. She figured maybe he was gonna ask her out for coffee or something. Then the dude walks up, totally deadpan, and says she can look all she wants, but he ain't got any extra coffee to spare. Ruby was totally floored by that and just wanted the ground to swallow her whole. Back at the Rift, a reporter was doing a live broadcast, saying this was one of 3 rifts that popped up in this update. To get to the next level, you gotta clear all the level 1 rifts, which is what other guilds are doing right now. The director of one of the channels was freaking out about who would clear the rift first, so they could snag the first interview. One of his staff came into his tent, offered him some tea, and filled him in on the latest intel. All the teams were somewhere in the middle of it, but the Shining Guild was pulling ahead fast. The assistant director blew past a reporter standing in front of the cameras, clearly on a mission. He yelled that one of the rifts had been cleared, but he didn't know by who, and we needed to get there ASAP. The director was screaming into the phone at his assistant to tell him what he was seeing and which guild it was. The assistant said it was the Berserk Guild, led by Ruby. The director couldn't believe it. Berserk wasn't exactly top tier. They were ranked 32nd. The assistant also noticed a Korean guy among those coming out of the rift, which was weird since Berserk was a European guild. News of the first guild to clear a rift spread like wildfire, and a mob of reporters was already running to their location. The assistant wasted no time and tried to interview Romeo, asking about what went down inside the rift and his connection to Berserk. But Romeo wasn't interested in answering the guy's questions. He just told him to back off. Reporters, arriving on the scene at lightning speed, immediately swarmed the guild and started firing off questions. Ruby clammed up about what happened, saying she didn't really deserve the credit and had no comment. She wanted that mysterious stranger to answer all the questions, but they told her he was already gone. Ruby was furious, 'cause an interview like that could totally change a player's rep. Clearing a rift first is a huge honor. A little later, another rift turned blue, and a new guild came out, having cleared it. It was the Gaon Guild, led by Kristoff. The crew swarmed him, begging for a quick word about coming in second. Back at their camp, Jack and his brother immediately flipped on the news to catch up on the rift situation. What Ruby said as she left really stung Kristoff, 'cause she was being a real jerk. Jack was surprised. Those were the only words from that team's interview after the first clear. Plus, he didn't get how they could have been beaten. Kristoff was seeing red, because now Gaon wasn't the only top-dog guild in the country. Jack figured they ran into someone tougher inside the rift, and only one recent acquaintance came to mind. First thing Romeo did when he got home was jump in the shower to warm up and wash off all the blood from the guys he took down. After the shower, James was hoping Romeo would crash, but he had other ideas. More cleaning, apparently. Once Romeo was out of the shower, he whipped up some dinner and cleaned up after himself. That's when James finally had a chance to check his updated stats. Turns out his level only went up 19 points, even though that mission was seriously messed up. James figured out that magic took less power than skills, but it took way longer to recharge. Better gear could help, but all Romeo had was that suit. James realized that weird girl had actually helped him out in the fight, and he should probably thank her for it. Romeo said it was all because he felt like he had something to prove, since he couldn't stand the idea of someone looking down on him. He declared that the Count's territory was next, and to do that, he needed to unlock some new skills. He found a good subject for research, that redhead girl, but decided to start with the new daily quests first. While heading out to check things out, the guy tuned into the news on the radio. Breaking news says they've cleared 95% of the outer areas, but intel shows the rift's breakdown rate suddenly spiked to 60%. At this rate, the rift could burst open. The Gaon Guild, watching the same broadcast, was seriously worried. It's only been a day, and a jump this big has never happened before. Jack said the window for clearing the area is shrinking if there are powerful monsters inside the rift. The channel director demanded they find out what's causing this spike. According to past data, the rift was breaking down much slower. The staff said even the guilds don't know why the rift is deteriorating so fast. The company's success is the least of their worries now. If the rift opens and monsters pour out, all the players and civilians are toast. The main character had to hurry. He was the only one who knew what was happening, because that information was only stored in Akshan. Vampires are creatures who share their power through blood. Count Askara shared his power with the monsters, and when the monsters died, the power returned to him. He started pouring that returned power into the monsters in his territory, making them stronger and speeding up the destruction process. James figured out that if they launch a raid on the Count's territory, there's a chance the rift will collapse immediately. Romeo thought Askura wasn't fit to be called an Earl and vowed to judge that monster and punish him. The kid was live streaming right next to the new rift, already 70% destabilized. And even though it was still early, guilds were already swarming the place. The blogger was telling his viewers that unlike the outer territories, where there were over 200 rifts, the Earl's land only had 30, meaning multiple guilds would be fighting over each one. while the guy was talking about a potential showdown between two powerful guilds. Jack from the Gaon Guild walked past him. Christoph immediately asked his brother if he'd found out anything useful. Jack stated that competition was unavoidable since there just weren't enough rifts to go around. When asked if they might run into the Radiant Guild, he replied that he saw them heading north. The streamer, hiding to observe the team, overheard talk about a fight between the top two guilds. But then, out of nowhere, people from another pretty well-known guild approached Goen from behind. Christoph was furious because he recognized the guild that was approaching them, and he was absolutely livid. The group that got the captain so worked up was the Inazuma Guild, led by Trent, level 376. The Inazuma clan and the Gaon clan were two seriously powerful guilds, and they'd been beefing for ages. Neither captain was thrilled about going into the same rift, but they didn't exactly have a choice. The second word got out about the two top guilds going head-to-head. Reporters swarmed the place. Reporters, journalists, bloggers. They just bombarded both teams with a million questions. Jack tried to calm his brother down, reminding him that the main thing was closing the rift, and if the clans just competed, everyone would lose. Suddenly, some dude in the crowd shouts out that Gaon are total chumps, weaker than Inazuma. That just lit a new fire under the Gaon guys, and they swore they'd tear their rivals to shreds and come out on top. On the news, the reporter said the Shining Guild and United Heavens Guild had split up the Northern Rift, and Berserk, Second Son, and Bohemia were headed to the Southern Rift, which had jumped up to 80% destabilized. Romeo was already inside the rift in the Count's territory, and he was thinking about how to use his magic power most effectively. Alchemist magic lets you shape stuff however you want, so the guy was able to whip up a cup and table out of stone. Thing is, the more detailed the stuff he makes, the more energy it drains. So, not exactly a game changer in a fight. Romeo had a whole army of enemies bearing down on him, but that was actually perfect. Gave him a chance to test out a different way to use his magic. He locked in on the new spell, ready to unleash it. The monsters sensed something weird and froze for a sec, eyes bugging out. The hunter turned the monsters to stone, using their reversion to their original state against them. This spell barely cost him anything, and he decided to call it reversal magic. Deep inside the Earl's territory, the Gaon Guild was locked in a brutal battle with monsters. Leading the charge was the Guildmaster himself, swinging his massive sword with animalistic fury, tearing through the enemy ranks. Huge, savage beasts lunged at him, trying to rip him to shreds. Christoph was a seasoned warrior, his swordsmanship unmatched. He parried attack after attack. After wiping out everyone, he noticed there were suspiciously few enemies. They ran into like 10 attackers max. The witch from his clan reported that Inazuma's team had the same situation after scouting the area. Even though the group split up at the start, Gaon's rivals ambushed them, having tracked the witch returning from her recon mission. Trent also pointed out that things were eerily quiet. The team captains started bickering again, promising to tear each other apart. Jack, who was monitoring the team with drones, cut them off. He needed their location because his signal was acting up. Finding out they were in the town square, he immediately told them to get the hell out of there. But unfortunately, it was too late to escape. The enemy was closing in, and a fight was unavoidable. An army of Count Ascura's knights, all level 350, was charging straight at them. Christoph didn't expect to face such a powerful army, but giving up wasn't an option. They had to keep fighting. The captain remembered cavalry's devastating power doubles on open ground. He was stumped. Even tanks would get chewed up if they were in the front. In this tight spot, Trent suggested teaming up with Christoph, even though he wasn't thrilled about it. Enemies started pushing from the other side too, trapping the group. Jack said one alliance already got wrecked by this cavalry and took massive losses, so they needed to bail, like yesterday. But there was nowhere to run. The enemy was already way too close. Just as Christoph swung at one of the riders, a bluish light flooded everything. And right in front of them, stone pillars shot up, blocking the rider's path. The players were totally bewildered. They had no idea who saved them. Their savior, predictably, was Romeo, a famous hero and a seriously strong player. Meanwhile, a blogger headed to where the Gaon guilds were, to keep tabs on them. But the viewers warned that a ton of bloggers were already following Gaon, so he should go keep an eye on Inazuma instead. The players couldn't figure out how this mysterious dude conjured up stone pillars all over the field. With just a gesture, without making a sound, he raised pillars across the whole battlefield. It was some seriously powerful and obscure magic. Trent was racking his brain, wondering what kind of power this player could have. What made it even weirder was that he wasn't wearing any combat gear. But his train of thought was suddenly cut short by the team yelling about new enemies. The enemies broke through again and charged at them through the stone pillars, knocking them to the ground. Christoph noticed that the stone pillars slowed down the cavalry, which he was going to thank Romeo for later. The commander had activated a barbarian-class skill, which seriously boosted his combat power and made him immune to damage. Finally, now he could roughly be on par with his opponents and dish out some serious pain. With his huge, razor-sharp sword, Kristoff struck down several riders at once. Trent's army jumped into the fray too, and Captain's orders were to turn any monster they saw into dust. The streamer who came to Inazuma was blown away, broadcasting everything live. Romeo charged in, taking on a knight way stronger than him, all by himself. He used anti-magic, turned the dude into stone, and single-handedly took down the cavalry knight. Then he walked up to the wounded enemy, dagger in hand, ready to finish him. But the weapon was basically falling apart. Romeo decided to mess with the dagger's power, try to change its shape and then revert it. But he didn't know if its original strength would come back. Still, he took the chance and morphed the dagger into a silver spike, way tougher, but maybe only good for one shot. Surprisingly, the dagger went right back to normal and didn't lose any of its edge. Over the comms, Jack told his brother that was the hunter they'd been looking for. And seeing him in action, Kristoff wanted him in his guild even more. Inazuma wanted this valuable player too, offering him crazy good deals, but Romeo just totally ignored them. Then some young vlogger hit him up, asking for an interview. Right after the fight, the Inazuma team swarmed Romeo, grilling him about whether he was in a guild and if he wanted to join them. Kristoff, shoving past the rival team, also threw his guild's hat in the ring. Live on air, with over 70,000 viewers glued to their screens, our main guy turned down the head of Gohan and told him to get lost. Back at the Shining Dawn's temporary camp, the leader and his crew were watching the news about Romeo's rejection. Samuel, the guild leader, was really intrigued by this kid and wanted to dig up some dirt on him. This girl named Rosalia chimed in, saying it was hard to pin down exactly what class he was. The news was replaying that live stream with the mystery player over and over. Rosalia was sure her boss could easily snag this hunter for themselves. Carl was fuming that everyone was talking about some random dude instead of their record-breaking first clear. Samuel said it's no big deal that the media's going nuts over a newbie. Their ratings depend on getting the exclusive. Jessie, the witch, snuck up behind the guild leader. She was blown away by this guy's magic. She'd never seen anything like it. This dude sparked her interest big time, and she found a ton of intriguing and attractive things about him. The Inazuma guild leader also wanted the silver-haired guy on his team. The news reporter was saying that the Earl's family territory had been successfully cleared, and the Shining Guild was the first team this time. Right now, all that's left is the Earl's Fortress Rift, and its progress is at 72%. Players worldwide are gearing up to jump in. With stakes this high, the players' temporary camps are super tense. That rift could burst open any second. Next up, the channel started playing videos from the battlefield, and Romeo was in them. The news anchors were talking about how this mysterious player didn't have a single magic accessory, which is usually a must-have in situations like this. They even suggested that not having accessories might be some kind of strategy, but Romeo just didn't have any. The host asked the expert if it was possible to move objects with a single hand motion, to which the expert spoke of a guy's bold and clever decision to reshape the terrain, since his opponent's mobility was their weakness. James started checking out the items he got for clearing the rift. Turns out, he scored a rare item. A necklace steeped in a blood curse with a sealed effect. These were cursed demon items. You could lift the curse, and then, with a certain chance, random effects would pop up. This item could also be used as a sacrifice during an exorcism ritual. Normally, the ritual's main goal is to off the demon without hurting the person. But with a sacrifice, things change. The guy could invite the demon into his mind and fight it there with an advantage. But the risks were also huge. Suddenly, Romeo's phone rang, and it was Jack from the Goan Guild. The guy didn't want to answer, because he figured he wouldn't hear anything good, just grief for what he said. Romeo just sent a message with only one word: trouble. Kristoff was bummed. He wanted to apologize for being a jerk earlier and offer better terms. Anyway, they were stuck, since he wasn't answering calls. And right now, Count Ascara was the bigger deal. Online, it said the rift was already at 84%, but then suddenly, an earthquake hit. Turns out the Count's family fortress suddenly broke through into the real world for some unknown reason. Conquered authorities told all civilians to evacuate immediately, because the casualties were already over 200. The Count's fortress was huge and terrifying, towering up after bursting out of the ground. Romeo was already on the scene. He hadn't expected it to actually break through. He confidently headed towards the manor's main entrance, and as usual, he was alone. Right there on the manor's doorstep stood a massive stone sculpture of a winged mythical beast. Romeo got nothing but bad vibes from that monument. The whole fortress felt too crummy, even for a vampire. But out of nowhere, the statue started moving. Its stone wings spread wide, and its eyes blazed with red fire. The players behind him were totally freaked. They didn't know what to do: help the guy or bail. The monster was ready to pounce on Romeo, standing right in front of it. It even swung a huge saber. But with just one flick of his wrist, the guy turned the monster into a pile of rocks. The Shining Guild had already arrived on the scene, and they heard a deafening sound, just like in the news videos today. Jessie decided to go check out who was causing all the ruckus by herself. Romeo was annoyed. The statue disgusted him, and the fact that the Count was proud of these statues just seemed pathetic. After the gatekeeper got wasted, the players immediately rushed inside the fortress, shoving each other out of the way. The main character noticed his quests got updated. A new quest popped up with a weird title. Let them fear, for the hunt has begun. James suggested Romeo think about what the new assignment meant, but they didn't have time for riddles. After that, the main character rushed into a huge, gloomy banquet hall. Paintings of the Count hung on the fortress walls, and they were horribly drawn. Eventually, the entire Gaian Guild was among the last to arrive at the Count's fortress. Ever since Kristoff went into the hallway with the paintings, he felt like someone was watching him. Jack realized this place had an abnormal status, laid on by demons, and it was all because of the portraits, which needed to be burned. After the portraits were destroyed, Kristoff felt a lot better. Jack warned that most players had already retreated because of the traps in the castle. The castle's interiors were causing status abnormalities. Kristoff realized that no matter how strong his barbarian class was, he was too easily affected by the abnormal status. Romeo made snarky comments about the fortress's interior, figuring the Count was a total narcissist. And finally, he reached the place he was looking for, after navigating the castle's twisted corridors. At the top of the stairs were huge carved doors, and a foul stench was coming from behind them. The main character knew Count Ascura was somewhere close, and the silence around him suggested the other players hadn't arrived yet. Suddenly, as if from nowhere, the head of a blonde sorceress appeared right in front of him, from above. She gushed about how awesome his unusual magic was, and started grilling him about his skills. Romeo, annoyed by the girl's behavior, told her to show some respect, because basic manners matter. Suddenly, the doors at the top burst open, and the Count's dark silhouette appeared before them. Romeo's natural enemy skill activated, and he was ready to fight. The Count, who was known for his explosive temper, demanded to know who dared disturb his peace. Romeo wasn't about to hide his anger and disgust for the monster. He told him he wasn't worthy of the title of Count. Ascura was amused by the bold player's words. She hadn't expected such courage and confidence from a human. Romeo pulled a necklace from his jacket, the one chosen as the sacrifice for the ritual. The guy said he'd teach the Count a lesson, and that's when his new skill activated. Exorcism rite. Romeo was going to summon Ascura into his mind and fight him there. But the vampire just smirked when he saw the grimy necklace. To get stronger, the Count had been gathering power, which he shared with his followers. But it didn't work. The necklace absorbed the vampire's consciousness, transporting him to an unknown place. Ascura was confused. It all happened so fast. Even he couldn't figure out where he was or how he got there. But seeing his enemy, he didn't waste time talking and immediately went on the attack. He sent a fiery blast towards the protagonist to obliterate him, and was a little bummed that the battle was over so quickly. But the guy didn't turn to ash. He was still alive and threw a sarcastic jab at the Count. The Count was livid at the kid's audacity. He couldn't figure out how he was still breathing, let alone without a scratch. Romeo told the Count to take a good, hard look and figure out who was alive and who was pushing up daisies. That's when the Count saw the illusion of his own corpse, with the hunter sitting on top of it. Romeo snapped out of his trance and kicked the Count out with him. The Count went down screaming and passed out cold. The Count woke up to the hunter's voice, mocking him and trying to scare him witless. The vampire was absolutely enraged by his powerlessness. He tried to gather all his strength and take a swing at his opponent, but he whiffed completely, only managing to take out the roof of the building. Meanwhile, Romeo activated his exorcism ritual skill. The monster didn't understand what was about to happen to him. This guy was making him question everything he thought he knew about power. The one with the higher spiritual power stat takes the initiative in the ritual, and because the Count was so weak, that person was our main character. The demon didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of messing with Romeo's mind. He begged him not to come any closer. The witch was stunned by the incredible sight, and asked the guy what was happening to the Count. The Count was completely out of his mind with fear, screaming into empty space, attacking nothing, and trying to escape the horror. A fear like the kind demons inflict on people was gripping the vampire, Count Asker, and then it completely consumed him. The new task was complete. All that was left was to finish off the Count. The guy raised his dagger over the vampire. Then he struck, but the damage was too small. That's when he realized he needed help. Romeo asked the girl to finish the job, but she started asking him why he couldn't do it himself. The witch realized there wasn't time for questions right now. First, they needed to kill the monster. She apologized for being insensitive and prepared to cast a powerful spell. Finally, she struck the monster, and with just one blow, it turned into a pile of ash. The Count was finally defeated, but the guy was still amazed by the witch's immense power. The Shining Squad was already running up behind them, reporting that all anomaly statuses were cleared and they knew the enemy was down. The team started grilling their teammate, asking if she was the one who took down Count Asker. Jessie finally introduced herself to the main guy and asked his name, also promising to learn some manners. Even though the girl was a little rough around the edges, as a reward for her help, Romeo decided to be her teacher, and then he told her his name. On the other side of the planet, a little girl was watching the news, which was all about the guy who went solo into the Count's fortress. The girl recognized him. She ran to her mom and started pulling her towards the TV to show her the guy. The TV was showing the girl's uncle, her mom's brother. Back at home, Romeo got right back into his usual routine, cleaning up. The whole time, his sisters wouldn't stop calling him, which wasn't surprising after a dozen, maybe even 100 news reports about him on TV. James had 3 sisters, and they were all close, but the guy didn't want to pick up because he knew they were going to yell at him. Suddenly, a deafening bang echoed on the door, and the sisters yelled, demanding he open up and let them in. The main character opened the door to find his 3 sisters. The eldest, Lily, with her daughter, the middle sister, Olivia, and the youngest, Alice. The guy told his sisters to chill out, keep it down so they didn't bother the neighbors, and invited them inside. The news kept going on about Romeo and his victory over Count Askura with that player, Jessie. That guy's the hottest topic on the airwaves right now. Watching the news, Jack wondered if Romeo would actually join their guild, considering all the invites he must be getting from other groups. Kristoff was sure the guy would join them. At least they had his phone number and a reason to get in touch. Jack had completely forgotten about the dungeon battle prize, and the right move was to give part of the reward to Romeo. And, talk business with him. Captain Goanna was pumped. Even if they couldn't snag the hunter for themselves, they'd at least show him respect and gratitude for his help. Each sister had a different reaction to the main character's new look. One was making fun of him, another said she liked her brother's new style, and the third was suspicious. The youngest sister asked if it was true he'd become a player, and that's why his appearance had changed because of his character. The sisters started remembering how their brother used to act like this as a kid, when he made up a whole other persona. Finally, one of the sisters brought up what they came for. The girls were worried about the danger this game presented. The sisters were totally shocked to see their brother on the news. They were afraid he might get hurt in a fight, or even worse. They also said they'd support him no matter what and always be on his side. The main character was touched by their words. As they said goodbye, the brother thanked his sisters for their kind words, and they told him not to blow all his money. It dawned on James that he must have gotten paid for winning such a huge battle. The guy couldn't believe his eyes. There was over 100 billion won in his bank account. Meanwhile, back at the Tower of Shining Roses, Rosalia was grilling Jessie with questions about Romeo. She wanted to know what kind of guy he was. Jessie turned to the girl, gave her an icy stare, and told her to stop bothering her. Rosalia gave in and said she wouldn't ask anymore. But she was still bugged about why the sorceress was watching etiquette videos. After the fight with the Count, Romeo automatically got the Vampire Count's orb for winning the duel. This thing was cursed, but it had a unique rating of 400. The necklace the guy used as a sacrifice, he got to keep that too, and the curse was lifted. James couldn't sleep a wink. All he could think about was the cash he got in his account, trying to figure out what to do with it. Maybe he should stick it in some CDs, or would it be smarter to buy magic items? Thing is, there weren't many items good enough, so buying something felt like throwing money away. Back at the dev headquarters, they were analyzing footage of Romeo's magic. The workers were arguing, some saying it was alchemy, others shooting that theory down. The alchemy limit formula says that's impossible, one guy argued. But another countered, it sure looked like alchemy to me. One of the employees started searching the player database for Romeo, but there was no one with that name. The dev figured the heat on that player would die down after the new update dropped. And since it was a Thursday, that's exactly what happened. The company got an email blast about the update. The email said the update would feature a new region, Yusra Island, a mysterious area that was once mentioned as a treasure island back in the original game. The news also mentioned the return of the Magic Conference, happening this week. Romeo was all ears, especially since this was the first regular academic conference since Arcana became a real thing. The news reported that one of the invited witches, Jessie, had arrived at the tower. The main character realized where that witch got her power, since she was ranked 4th in the world, and he was planning on hitting up that conference. James was a little freaked out, but he also knew there was a good chance he could get something out of going there. The Mage Tower was buzzing and packed, with all sorts of people showing up from every corner of the world. The experienced sorceress, Cassie, was stoked and buzzing with excitement, waiting for the regular conference to kick off again. Cassie was totally invisible to everyone around, like she was behind some kind of force field. She snapped at the guy who bumped into it near her. Just then, a woman stepped through a portal. Turns out it was Jessie, the famous sorceress. She called Cassie out for being so rude. Jessie pointed out that nobody can see this magic unless they're invited, so the kid wasn't at fault. Cassie apologized and took the invitation from the sorceress's outstretched hand. Then she announced that Jessie was the last guest on the list, so she was about to head out. The guest asked her to stick around because she had a feeling one more person would show up for the conference. Romeo arrived at the mage's tower and was blown away by how beautiful and massive it was inside. But every time he went there, it was packed with people, making it a real pain to squeeze through. Suddenly, someone in the crowd spotted him and started making a fuss about the mysterious hunter from the news being there. One of his fans asked if they could take a picture together. Romeo, totally pissed, just ripped into him, basically telling him to get lost. The fan didn't even flinch. He was stoked that his idol told him off in person. After that, everyone in the crowd started begging Romeo to yell at them too. The guy noticed something weird about the wall to his left. It was different somehow. Felt off. He took a running leap and smashed right through the wall, ending up in some secret VIP party. Next, Cassie walked the guy to where the conference was being held. The girl frantically flipped through the guest lists, trying to figure out who she missed. But according to the list, everyone was already here. Romeo politely asked if she had any questions or problems with the list. The girl, face red, insisted everything was fine, and asked if he was here for the conference and why he didn't have an invitation. The sorceress couldn't figure out how a guy without an invite could see through the illusion and end up here. The guy asked if he could join the conference without an invite. Cassie assured him it was cool. 'Cause there's a rule that anyone who can see through the illusion can come, even without an invite. Turns out this dude was the first person to ever see through the illusion without being invited. They finally reached the crystal hall they needed, the place for seeking ultimate knowledge. When Arcana became real, the Arcanians, the characters who lived inside the game, showed up in our world too. And the most powerful dude among them, the heir to the magic tower, is now the head honcho mage, Marcel. Jessie was so bored listening to this story, she actually dozed off. She was only here for the quest. Marcel was saying that the magic tower, for some reason, got summoned to the traveler's world, and now travelers and NPCs have to team up. Jessie perked up and woke up when she heard the head mage was going to talk about science and magic. Marcel invented a new kind of fire, created using both magic and science, and he calls it fusion. He kept going on about how you gotta be super careful with this magic, 'cause there's still a bunch of unknowns. Marcel said he needed help figuring this stuff out and asked if anyone had any questions. A hand shot up from the back. This guy was itching to ask something. Romeo pointed out that the head mage's research seemed kinda disorganized. Marcel was thrown off, so he asked the guy to explain why he thought that. The guy started explaining that he just felt a difference in the fusion process between magic and science. He showed off the exact same spell, 'cause he'd felt that same difference before, but between skill and magic. Marcel was blown away. He couldn't believe the guy could just whip out a spell he'd only seen once. Romeo kept talking about using centrifugal force during the interference process, and even though the spell wasn't perfect, it was still pretty good. Marcel asked this unusually insightful dude to join him and help with his research. This offer just unlocked a new quest for the guy, and he was stoked he hadn't come all this way for nothing. Meanwhile, the Berserker Guild landed on a brand new, uncharted island, packed with secrets and mysteries. The island was already crawling with reporters, journalists, and nosy bloggers, all eager to get the scoop on this new location. And to everyone's surprise, the Arcanians, those NPC dudes, showed up too. Turns out, the island's known as Treasure Island, and Ruby wasn't happy about it, figuring the Arcanians would just get in the way. The captain got a call from a mage buddy, saying the conference was over and Romeo was there. The girl was amused that the guy, like always, acted like a total nutjob and started lecturing the head mage. She was shocked they didn't kick him out. But when the head mage admitted he messed up and offered the guy a quest, that was the last straw. Marcel said if the main character needed anything at all, he'd gladly get it, no matter the cost. Romeo called his bluff and was thrilled with such an awesome opportunity. The top dogs of the 5-star Magic Tower summoned Marcel for a little chat. The head mage said he'd heard about Marcel teaming up with some traveler for research. He reminded Marcel that the tower's golden rule is to stay out of travelers' business, and demanded an explanation. The wizard started explaining that this traveler clearly grokked the concept of magic, bridged the gap, and had serious magical talent. The head mage said that wizards are accountable to each other and have to own their actions. Even though the head of the Magic Council wasn't going to punish him, he told him to be responsible for his choices. Marcel couldn't stand these wizards. They were total hypocrites, always preaching about responsibility but never taking it themselves. At the council doors, he bumped into Cassie, who was lugging huge boxes of magical stuff. He asked her what she was doing on the top floor, and she said she was carrying things Romeo had asked for. Marcel offered to help her out, since he was heading to see the guy anyway. The wizard brought all the magic tools and books the kid asked for. Romeo was blown away by how rare and powerful the artifacts were, but their level was way too high. Marcel asked the guy if he liked the stuff, if it was to his liking. Barely hiding his annoyance, the hunter said the stuff was useless because it wasn't his level. Marcel apologized for not paying attention and said he underestimated the guy. He also didn't know about items related to regeneration, but apparently, they're a real thing. The mage held out a 6-star brooch that didn't have a level requirement and restored 10% of your strength. After Romeo spotted the magic tear, the wizard thought he was an unusual mage. But turns out he's so brilliant he even knew about that kind of artifact. At first, the main character was skeptical about the brooch because he didn't see the point of its magic. Marcel said with a bummed-out voice that they wouldn't be able to continue the research right now. Romeo understood everything and said he'd wait for the mage to overcome the rift, and he'd keep the brooch for now. Marcel thanked the player for understanding, and then he realized that meeting Romeo wasn't an accident, because with him, he could change the magic tower. A blogger has already arrived on the island, the same one who filmed the most famous footage from the last tier. A huge number of players gathered in front of the portal to the island, waiting to be sent over. Suddenly, some imposing-looking player he didn't recognize jumped the kid from behind. It was Kimber from the infamously scandalous Supernova Guild, since bad stuff always seemed to happen around them. Kimber asked him to pass a message to Romeo, but it sounded more like a threat. The kid was super scared and pissed. Plus, his stream chat was full of haters talking smack about his idol. After studying books for a long time, the main character took a short break, wondering if he should even go to the island. James thought there was nothing to do on the island, since there weren't any demons there, and even the regular mobs were too strong. But those plans were scrapped when the dude got a notification about a new mission. The mission: investigate some serious bad mojo on Yusra Island. Basically, he's got to take down the 7 deadly sins. James was thinking, look, I beat that count by pure luck. Ain't no way lightning strikes twice. Romeo didn't care. Before, he had no reason to go, but now he had a doubt. And that meant no reason to hesitate. The vlogger, who was practically dying to meet his idol, was over the moon. Romeo, having arrived on the island, was totally ready to figure out what the heck was going on. But the second the main character set foot on the island, he felt something was seriously off. He sensed a powerful force influencing the whole island, and his hunter skill kicked into overdrive. The guy figured that kind of power had to be coming from a whole different level of demons. The hunter felt a massive wave of evil beneath his feet. Maybe the island itself was the evil, which meant his hunter skill would be active 24/7. The blogger, hidden in the tall grass, watched Romeo from a distance, not wanting to interfere. A fan guessed that the hunter had some kind of strategy for Yusra Island. The main character was looking for someone he could fight most effectively. He didn't want to start with weaker monsters. The blogger told his audience that he didn't intend to bother Romeo, so he'd stop the stream if he needed to. Suddenly, sounds of struggle and rustling leaves came from the thicket. Something was moving in the bushes, and it didn't sound good. A couple of players emerged right in front of them, having broken away from their team, and they clearly needed help. Because they were being chased by an emerald tiger that was impossible to target because of its translucent body, which reflected the sunlight. The emerald tiger was the strongest monster on the island. Its level was 420 points. The players, defending themselves from the beast, finally looked around to see who they'd stumbled upon. Their solid plan for a gradual, efficient fight was, unfortunately, ruined. Romeo started calculating his plan of action. The sun glinting off that tiger's hide was blinding, so he needed to take the beast down quick. The tiger lunged, jaws wide open, showing off teeth like daggers. But the hunter was ready, conjuring up that fire spell he'd been practicing in the magic tower. The tiger was engulfed in flames, a flash of light, and then, boom, big explosion. Tiger, gone, and the guy got a reward and leveled up for the win. The other players standing nearby were blown away. How could one dude take down a monster that strong with a single hit? Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, Carl, the guild leader of Second Son, was fuming. They were stuck, unable to push deeper. One of his teammates suggested linking up with the squad that split off earlier. Carl wondered if splitting the team was a mistake. He'd been counting on racking up a ton of achievements on this expedition. Maybe it was the island itself, some kind of influence he hadn't accounted for. Got a call from the squad heading west. Kid said they're turning back to the team because the route's clear. Captain was totally lost. How could the route be clear? Who could have cleared it? Another call came in about a report from a guild member who went to that magic conference where Romeo was. Guild leader ordered the analysis team to dig up everything on Romeo. Said he might be more trouble than we thought. After the fight with the tiger, the main guy got a flawless emerald crystal with a crazy high rating for taking it down. Suddenly, Romeo felt like the air got colder and heavier. Like something was seriously off. dude got a new system message. Something about a new building being unlocked. The ground started shaking, everything went blood red, and a warning popped up saying Yusra Island was being consumed by something bad. Players were freaking out. They knew this meant a new rift was opening, even if the way it was happening was a little different. Romeo was sure the demon of intense desire was awakened by the greedy wants of the people who came to the island. Judging by the notification, looks like our main character's gonna have to throw down with a greed demon. The blogger was freaking out too, wondering if the rift was actually starting. If it kept going, some serious evil was gonna wake up. Romeo got a new notification telling him to stop the demon, which cheered him up since it made his mission way easier. He had to hurry. The lust for loot had already clouded the players' minds. Romeo wasn't surprised at their reactions, knowing it was the demon's power messing with them. To keep the island's treasures from being corrupted by greed, all the players had to give up wanting them. But that was a tall order, since their minds were already gone. Romeo figured there was only one thing left to do: grab all the treasure himself. The Radiant Guild was already on the second island, and they'd managed to snag the second set of treasures. Rosalia explained that the 10 islands represented 10 levels of the rift, and every time a treasure was taken, the rift widened. Samuel suddenly asked his team if they thought he could win in a fight against Romeo. Rosalia froze, asking if he was kidding, because if he wasn't, he'd be losing the best damn mage, Jesse. Command reported the rift process just jumped up another level, thanks to the World Unification Guild. The captain barked at everyone to get ready, 'cause he also thought it was essential to grab all the loot. James tried to talk Romeo out of his plan, but the guy was totally set on it. Blocking the main character's path was an army with a lion emblazoned on their flags and armor. The hunter recognized them as the Knights of the Lionheart, and their commander, Richard Kingsler. One of the knights went ballistic because the kid disrespected their leader, but Richard stopped him and asked the traveler's name. Richard said he sensed a totally different vibe from Romeo than from other travelers. Suddenly, a massive flaming meteor came hurtling towards the army. The monster who controlled the island, a level 450 beast, launched that projectile. Lionheart, leader of his army, ordered all his warriors to prepare for the coming battle. Turtle went on the attack too, a fiery meteor ready to launch from its eyes at any second. Suddenly, a massive paw swept over the head of one of the soldiers, nearly crushing him. But the main hero rushed to the rescue, using magic to erect a stone dome. There was no time for talk, as Turtle attacked again, bombarding the guild with a hail of meteorites. The main character's brooch was a huge help in this situation, because without its energy, the guy would have already passed out. The guild captain turned to the guy, offering his sincere gratitude and offering his help at any time. The blogger was live streaming everything, and he was blown away that the guild leader swore on his heart. The blogger moved in for a close-up of the island's owner, who looked absolutely ferocious. Richard ordered his army of knights to attack the monster in the name of honor and justice. The main character was standing on the field, calling out where to hit the monster. Its head and crown were the weak spots. First, they needed to flip the turtle over to expose its soft spot, then hammer at its legs. But the order was performing way worse than expected in the fight, even though the guild itself was supposed to be top tier. The army was used to close-quarters combat. Now the reserves were just standing back, waiting for their turn to jump in. Glancing at the destruction report, the main character was horrified. It was already at 50%. Suddenly, the ground beneath the fighters cracked open, and lava started spewing out of the fissures. The fighters were running out of room to maneuver, so Romeo, thinking fast, decided to conjure up some battlefield space. Then he asked the commander if he was ready to attack on his signal. Romeo was about to open up a path for the troops. He focused and unleashed his power. Using almost all his strength, the guy created a master's staircase, just like in the Magic Tower. The Knights of the Lionheart were blown away by the main character's creative skills. Meanwhile, their captain wasted no time and charged head-on at the island's master. Richard's army followed right behind him, and they all hit that giant turtle at once. But the Lionheart commander did the most damage, ending the fight with one final blow. Romeo gets a game notification that Richard turned down the reward for the battle, and the other knights followed his lead. Notifications kept popping up, telling Romeo that he leveled up and got some sweet loot. Richard walks up to Romeo and starts talking about his brooch, the one the Emperor gave to the Magic Tower way back when. The Lionheart commander swears loyalty to Romeo, promising to be his shield and sword. This sudden declaration surprises Romeo. He wasn't expecting to get such a powerful ally. The island's treasure appears before Romeo, his reward for defeating the giant turtle. James is totally stunned by what he's seeing. He's not sure if he should accept this gift. It could be trouble. Then the guy notices someone's wiped out another island. Looks like the destruction process is already 60% complete. While James was distracted by the news, Romeo managed to grab the orb. The main character also notices that his character is about to do something reckless, but the adventurer doesn't hesitate for a second. For Granfell Claudiarpe Romeo, wealth is fleeting. All the knights are in awe of the magnificent sight before their eyes. The blogger, who's been watching the main character's adventures the whole time, is also blown away. Romeo's been surrounded by luxury and wealth since childhood, so he doesn't even understand greed. The guy easily manages to get the island's treasure without increasing the destruction percentage. Someone else was watching everything happening on the battlefield from afar. This guy looked more like a thug than a player, waiting for our hero to grab all the loot. The dude he'd just wounded was cursing him out, promising payback for his buddy's deaths. But those words were never gonna come true, 'cause the mystery man just offed him. Innocent blood dripped down the guy's hand. Killing the player got him a karma point boost. He snatched the crystal from the team he'd just wiped out, and promised Romeo the same fate with his treasures. James is standing there with a sour look on his face, like he's not too thrilled with what's going down. He's bummed that the island's treasure isn't as impressive as he was expecting. But our hero's attention is grabbed by a notification that his team just got a new member. Turns out Richard, true to his word, joined Romeo's crew as thanks for saving him. The Lionheart leader's knights followed him too, swearing to stick by the brooch holder as long as they're on Yusra Island. James never expected Richard to go this far and actually join him. He figured they'd just stay casual acquaintances. The main character's blown away that the best knights in the world decided to follow him. The guy decides not to waste this opportunity and agrees to bring the Lionheart Knights onto the team. All this time, a guy who turns out to be named Kinber has been watching the players' conversation. He's talking with his partners, who aren't sure they can actually swipe the island's treasure from Romeo. But Kinber's not backing down. His thirst for action is stronger than his good sense. The guy wants to take out the main character with a nasty trick, waiting for Romeo to be completely vulnerable. But the main character spots Kinber. His gaze is fixed right where the guy's hiding. From the intense aura coming from Romeo, the bandit feels like his throat's been slit in a split second. But it's just an illusion, and it totally freaks Kinber out. Meanwhile, James, totally clueless, is just soaking in the scenery. Romeo's thinking, yeah, Commander Richard's got that high rank for a reason. He spotted our uninvited guest too. Richard asks the main guy, should we take care of that rat hiding in the bushes? But Romeo doesn't think it's worth the trouble to waste time on small-time punks. Meanwhile, other guild crews found treasures on more islands, pushing the overall damage level up to 80%. He tells everyone to hurry to the last island so they can beat the other factions there. Kinber's left alone with his thoughts, which are all messed up from the horrible stuff he just went through. He realizes the main character spared him, and that's the only reason he's still breathing. That's exactly what he tells his partners, who are waiting for him to give them some intel. The squad leader listens to Kinder and is totally confused about why he suddenly flipped and decided to bail. The guy's so pissed he smashes his phone. He's lost it because he blew all his cash on poison he doesn't even need anymore. The squad leader's name is Kieran, and right now, he's absolutely livid about what just went down. He shoves his own guy, accusing him of stabbing him in the back too. Kieran's convinced the rest of his crew is in Kinber's pocket, and that just makes him even more ballistic. His partners can't figure out how their captain went completely nuts over some dough. But the rage just keeps building, filling Kieran's body more and more every second. Meanwhile, the main hero stops dead in his tracks and glances over. Romeo's hunter senses are screaming that the evil on this island just leveled up. But he hasn't seen what's causing it yet. Kieran's losing it big time. He's starting to attack his own teammates. His partners never saw this betrayal coming from their captain. They're dying, cursing his name. This dude's straight up murdering people left and right, no holds barred. A blogger saw all this go down, and now he's totally freaked out by what he witnessed. A demon took over Kieran's body, completely consumed his soul. And now he's dancing to the demon's tune. The blogger hauls ass, getting as far away as possible from that murder scene. He's lost in his head, so he doesn't see that root sticking out of the ground. Luckily, a guy nearby catches him before he eats dirt. This stranger's with the Explorers Federation, and he offers the kid a safe place to chill with them. The blogger's grateful for the save. He figures he's safe with these guys. Drones with cameras are already swarming the final island, ready to broadcast the treasure fight showdown. The reporters are explaining to their viewers that Yusra Island is split into 10 islands, each with its own treasure. There are 2 ways to snag the reward. One is to beat the island's boss. The other way is less messy. You gotta solve the island's riddle to get the treasure. The Shining Guild is already at the last island, ready to claim their prize. Hot on their heels is the Gayan clan, and they ain't planning on losing this fight. The other guilds are also hustling to clear this Yusra Island ASAP. Suddenly, everyone shut their traps and froze in place. They were stunned to see the Lionheart Knights arrive, the Empire's strongest warriors. But what really blew everyone's minds was that Romeo was leading them all. James wasn't expecting this kind of reaction. He definitely didn't want to draw this much attention. The dude felt like everyone was staring at him with either disgust or straight-up hate. Richard's picking up on something weird in the air, and it's got him on edge. Romeo sees the Lionheart commander spooked and turns to see what's got him so jumpy. Then, lava starts bubbling up from the ground, torching everything in its path. But after the fiery flood, the boss of the final island crawls out of the pit. Kristoff's ready to throw down with this massive monster made entirely of lava. Richard's not sure they can take down an opponent this tough to fight, but Romeo tells him not to sweat it. He's already got a plan to win this thing. The main character starts waving his hands, channeling creation magic. The leader of the Radiant Guild notices Romeo's grinning, even in this crazy situation. The main character's digging deep, remembering the basics of magic to nail this spell. The carp's already flying towards all the guilds, completely engulfed in flames. Everyone's frozen, waiting to see what the main character's gonna pull out of his hat. But they couldn't even imagine Romeo could control lava, making it rise up like that. Only Richard was ready for the main character's tricks, and is already flying towards the monster. Samuel snapped out of it too, and launched his own lightning-fast attack on the island's boss. The rest of the players followed, eager to take down the monster ASAP. But the island's boss is one of the strongest creatures for a reason. He's dodging every attack, bouncing around like crazy. The guild's joint attack fails, but then, a split second later, some kind of objects are falling from the sky. They hit the giant carp's body, stopping it dead in its tracks. Turns out they're stone spears, and they hit all the monster's vital points. Everyone's blown away that Romeo can manipulate matter like that. That kind of magic takes a crazy amount of juice. The main dude's telling the Lionheart commander to finish off the island's big boss. The guy slices the carp's body in half with one swing, ending the fight right there. Everyone involved in the battle gets a notification that it's over. Everyone gets a reward for beating the boss, except for the Shining Guild, who didn't really contribute to the fight. The reporters are stoked to announce that the Lionheart Knights and Romeo got the biggest rewards for the battle. Meanwhile, the main character gets the island's treasure, which he snags without a second thought. But as soon as Romeo touches the sphere, the destruction percentage immediately spikes. James realizes he couldn't have caused it. It's more likely that greed has taken hold of another treasure. Elsewhere on the island, someone's jumped the Explorers Federation. Turns out it's Kieran, the guy who snatched the island's treasure right out from under the Federation's nose. He's fighting a losing battle with a demon inside him, and it's gaining ground fast. This demon wants everything it's craved for ages, and Kieran's gonna be its ticket into this world. But out of nowhere, a knight jumps the monster, slashing at Kieran with their blade. It's a Lionheart knight, here to back up the Federation's research team. And Romeo's with her. He's the one who brought her, 'cause he sensed the demon on Yusra Island. The girl's asking for the order to take down the monster. But the main character's stalling, because a new class quest just popped up. The dude realizes he's never faced anything this messed up before. Some serious evil is brewing on Yusra Island. The demon's so powerful it just obliterates the island's treasure. Looks like our hero's mission just got a major update. Forget saving treasure. Romeo's gotta stop greed from resurrecting. Everyone else is feeling it too. The sheer, terrifying power radiating off that monster. Meanwhile, a gigantic hand, claws razor sharp, is bursting up from underground. Everyone's frozen, watching in horror as this monster reshapes the entire landscape. That hand's pulling all 10 islands together, merging them into one massive landmass. And right in the center of this new land, some kind of crazy structure is starting to rise up. Richard's watching all this go down, totally freaked. Turns out, he knows exactly what building just planted itself on the island. That gorgeous castle, perched on the hilltop, is shimmering gold in the sunlight, like some kind of priceless artifact. Romeo figured that palace was just another treasure, but the truth is, that building's where the evil called greed is sitting pretty. Romeo just found out his class quest to save the island's treasures is officially on hold. Out of nowhere, more monsters start popping up from underground, right where the players are standing. Turns out these undead are controlled by the greed demon, and they're coming in hot to crush the invaders. The reporters are freaking out too, and one of the guys gets a notification on his phone. The dude reads the message he just got, and what he sees totally spooks him. He's booking it to the Arcana Control Association, trying to convince them to stop the guilds from fighting. Our main guy's reading the update too, and it says the recommended level for fighting on Yusra Island is 600 or higher. The Lionheart commander orders his order to hold their ground. Just then, Romeo walks up to him, asking Richard to back him up. The main character's laying it out. He wants to take the fight to the greed demon. And to do that, he needs the strength and power of the Lionheart Knights, who swore an oath to protect Romeo. Richard's digging the hero's plan, seeing once again how strong the guy is, body and soul. James, though, is feeling pretty down about this fight, knows his mana ain't fully charged yet. The Lionheart commander barks out orders to his order, telling them to charge into battle against the undead. Everyone's blown away by Romeo's insane courage and the brave knight standing strong in the face of danger. The soldiers were ready to die for their commander's orders and fearlessly charged into the attack. The hero's actually impressed, noting the knights aren't as weak as he thought they were. Romeo's also stoked that his mana level is almost back to 100%. But just when the hero's distracted, some undead creep is sneaking up on him from behind. Romeo spots the monster way too late, only just manages to draw his dagger. Just then, some unknown force is closing in on them, moving at breakneck speed. She zooms right past the main character, leaving him totally confused about what just happened. Turns out, the one packing that energy blast into the fight is the head of the Gaon Guild. Alongside Kristoff, the Berserker Guild leader arrives, tearing through any undead that get in her way. After those heavy hitters, other adventurers are showing up too, all hungry for the island's treasure. James is stoked that powerhouses like Kristoff and Ruby are backing him up. But Romeo's not feeling his creator's vibe. He's pissed that someone's messing with his magic. James thinks the kid's being way too harsh. He could hurt Kristoff and Ruby's feelings talking like that. Meanwhile, one of the Lionheart Knights notices the undead he just took down are starting to get back up. Kristoff, caught up in the heat of battle, calls out to the priests to bless the knights. Suddenly, a bright white light flashes in front of the armored guy, cutting through the darkness and filling him with this weird hope and excitement. We've got priests from the Gaon Guild here on behalf of their leader, here to bless the knights before the undead fight. The soldiers are starting to feel their physical stats getting a boost, which is really pumping them up. Romeo thanks the Gaon Guild leader for helping with the undead problem, saying he'll never forget it. When Kristoff offers to help the main character with any extra defensive skills, the guy says he doesn't believe in a higher power. That really bums Kristoff out. He thought he was finally getting somewhere with Romeo. Meanwhile, in the heat of battle, a demon sneaks up on the Lionheart commander. What the main character said about losing faith really hit Richard hard, and his guard dropped. The guy's sinking deeper and deeper into the illusions the greed demon is showing him. Richard's remembering himself as a young man, back in the Empire at the Emperor's court. His Majesty is sitting on the throne in front of the man, silently listening to the knight's report. Richard saying more demons are showing up really bums out the Emperor, because he knows a ton of his people are going to die in this fight. His Majesty's thinking back to how the monster problem blew up after the Magic Tower, and some of his people went missing. Everything the Emperor had just vanished from his lands in a heartbeat, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. The dude's just lost, wondering why his world's gotta go out like this, and why God ain't answering his prayers. But Richard's saying the demons are the ones blocking the path to the big guy upstairs. The Lionheart commander swears he and his order will wipe these monsters off the map of the Empire. The Emperor tells Richard to cool his jets, saying he doesn't believe in God anymore. That throws the guy for a loop. It's the last thing he expected to hear from his king. But the Emperor smiles, saying even though he's lost faith in God, he still believes Richard can pull this off. The guy snaps back to reality, remembering the mission the Emperor gave him. Richard's face to face with Legat, the demon responsible for all the suffering of mankind. The commander of the Lionhearts, without a second thought, charges head-on at the demon. But Legat's not sweating it. He says Richard's too late, and resistance is pointless. Some of the knights noticed a weird blue light behind them. The last thing Richard saw before he got teleported was the demon's terrifying mug. The commander of the Lionhearts ends up smack dab in the middle of a mega city, miles from the rift. In Richard's place, there's a double, completely taken over by the demon of greed. James noticed this ominous energy radiating off the commander of the Lionhearts. The others got spooked too, realizing something seriously messed up was going on with Richard. The man swings his sword, looking to put down anyone who gets in his way. Romeo's totally missing the Lionheart commander's lightning-fast attack, putting his life on the line right now. But lucky for him, Kristoff swoops in at the last second to save his bacon. Except Romeo didn't want the help. He's pissed that the Gaon Guild leader butted in. Kristoff was expecting a totally different reaction, and now he's standing there, confused as hell. Meanwhile, Richard's still going after his own men, who are completely blindsided by their commander's actions. The guy's flipping out because these demons are trying to pass themselves off as his buddies. That's when the knights start realizing their commander's under some kind of spell. Richard keeps hammering away, wanting to take down these demons in disguise ASAP. James spots this weird glow in front of him, and it's setting off all kinds of alarm bells. Right then, Richard pours every ounce of strength he's got into this one attack, trying to crush as many of his so-called enemies as possible. The Lionheart commander's locked and loaded. He ain't planning on letting anyone walk away from this. His punch packs so much raw power, anything caught in the crossfire is gonna get turned to dust. After that kind of energy blast, all that's left is scorched earth. Everyone miraculously survived that attack. The players were blown away by Richard's power. Kristoff was floored by the Lionheart commander's strength too, calling him a straight-up beast, not a human being. Just when everyone was catching their breath from the impact, they noticed something unbelievable. It was Romeo, and he stopped Richard's attack with just his bare hand. But the main character wasn't doing anything special, he was just trying to protect himself. In Richard's eyes, Romeo doesn't look like some kind of fiend. He's demanding to know what the guy is. But the Lionheart commander's got a short fuse. He's already gearing up to attack the main character again. But Romeo tells the guy to hold up, says he's got something to say. Richard doesn't care what the main character says. He's planning to wipe out anyone even remotely connected to demons. So Romeo puts his hand out, like, "Peace, dude," trying to get the knight to chill. Richard's watching him like a hawk, and he spots the magic tower brooch on Romeo's chest. The knight's mind flashes back to when he promised to protect whoever wore that thing. Romeo's stoked to see Richard snapping out of it. He sees a flicker of recognition in his eyes. At the same time, the main character gets a notification that his exorcism skill just leveled up to 2. While Romeo's checking out his new achievement, the greed demon sneaks up on him from behind. It starts trying to absorb the main character, trying to bend him to its will. But all the demon manages to do is teleport Romeo into its own mind. The main character was face to face with the demon himself, who seemed more like pure evil than a man. The demon began his story about how he just wanted to protect his island, Yusra, recalling that the suffering of the people started with the arrival of a stranger. The island's king and all the residents treated the man, who washed up from the ocean, with kindness. But the only thanks the stranger gave them was to return to the island with weapons and slaughter the locals. Eventually the man reached the king of Yusra, who couldn't understand this act of plunder. He even offered to share the island's treasures, but the stranger just laughed and said half wasn't enough. He wanted it all. The man's words plunged the king of the peaceful island into an abyss of hatred. In the end, he was consumed by rage and a burning desire to reclaim all the island's treasures for himself. Romeo listened to the king's story and told him to stop doing something stupid. The main character believes that money doesn't matter. The guy's words surprise the demon, but he's unshakable and isn't going to listen to Romeo. The main guy's saying gold's fleeting. The only thing worth a damn is the pride in your heart. Those words hit the air like a punch, really pissing off the greed demon and sending him into a rage. Romeo snaps back to reality, and in that time, he figures out what makes this monster tick. He gathers up all his mana and starts weaving some serious magic in his palm. The main hero aims that energy at the Golden Palace and starts tearing the whole place down. That much raw magic is insane, because not just any player can pull off something like that. Romeo ends up completely wrecking the Golden Palace, turning it into dust. The main character summons the greed demon, telling him again that he's a fool for caring so much about shiny rocks. The demon shows up in front of him, even bigger now, and transformed into a total nightmare. He's absolutely livid that some regular dude dared to mess with one of the 7 deadly sins. The demon's power was so intense, it froze all the players in their tracks. And on top of that, he was stealing their breath, wanting to turn them all into undead to guard his palace. The main character went ballistic at the demon's behavior, telling him to chill out with his twisted desires. Hearing that made the other players respect Romeo and his willpower even more. But the main character's words didn't faze the greed demon, they just cracked him up. That's when Romeo activates his new skill, called the exorcism rite. The main character shatters the sphere, unleashing the power hidden inside it. But the greed demon isn't so easily scared. He launches his counterattack. At that moment, the king of Yusra Island stops the monster's actions, saying he's had enough of all this destruction. In his final moments, the greed demon curses the man for his betrayal. The reporters are going wild right now, totally hyped about how things wrapped up on Yusra Island. Romeo's face to face with the guy he already met inside the demon's head. The king's like, "How are you even alive? I distinctly remember you kicking the bucket." After taking down such a tough enemy, our main guy's getting flooded with loot notifications. He'll be sorting through those for ages. One message caught Romeo's eye. A notification saying he snagged the island's treasure, a busted-up crown. Everyone was tripping out 'cause some random dude just popped up where the palace used to be. Our hero pulls the island's crown out of his inventory and holds it out to the king. As soon as that thing's on the guy's head, the memories start flooding back. Romeo just got another golden notification. He cracked the secret of Yusra Island. All the other adventurers who threw down in the fight got the same message too. Even the guys who had no clue about the fight, halfway across the world, they got the memo too. So, the heroes win against the greed demon? That basically unlocked the lost territory in Arcana, where that wrecked gold palace used to be. Boom, a brand new castle. And it's not giving off such creepy vibes anymore. Everyone started realizing, yo, these changes, they're happening because of that dude on the island. That was Akuna, the last king of the lost kingdom of Yusra. The players who saw this massive world shift go down were totally blown away. Right then and there, Akuna bowed to Romeo and called him his savior. The main character just shrugged off the king's words, no big deal, and told him his name. Everyone was shocked at Romeo's nerve. I mean, he's standing in front of royalty, not just some random dude. But Akuna didn't sweat the hero's attitude. He just promised he'd remember his savior's name forever. The king remembered Romeo's words about stopping the spread of evil. Claiming those words made him start fighting the demon. Akuna was grateful to the hero for a second chance, but he wasn't sure he could handle the weight of responsibility again. Meanwhile, players from the Second Sun Guild were rushing to the site of the recent battle. The leader, a guy named Carl, realized the rich kingdom he'd read about was actually Yusra Island. Akuna kept thinking about his next move, unsure if people would follow him again. Romeo seemed to sense the king's worries, so he offered to help rebuild Yusra Island. Akuna was deeply grateful to his benefactor for the support. But the thing is, the hero only said those supportive words because it was part of his quest. After talking with Romeo, the king decided to announce his plan to rebuild the kingdom of Yusra from the ruins. Just then, the adventurers from the Second Sun Guild arrived, wanting to meet the king. Carl's stoked that Akuna's bringing the island back to life. He's convinced it's a killer move, seeing as how resource-rich this place is. Dude's pumped. The Second Sun Guild leader practically sprints over to the main guy to give him the glad hand. Romeo's clearly not digging this dude getting all up in his personal space like that. Carl felt the heavy vibe coming off the main character too. He realized he messed up. Turns out Romeo was about to catch some Z's, and this guy just had to barge in and ruin it. Carl tried to smooth things over, starting with his life story, hoping to get some sympathy from the big man. But Romeo wasn't having it. He just wants to wrap things up on this island and bounce. The main character turns to the king and says he's got an offer for him. Later, Romeo's chilling in his office when Jesse drops by, looking all proper after boning up on etiquette. But the main guy doesn't seem impressed. He just asks her what she wants. Jesse started grilling Romeo about his abilities and how he took down that demon. But the main dude burned through so much mana during the fight, he was completely wiped out and crashed right there in his chair. Jesse noticed and froze, not wanting to wake the adventurer. She crept closer to Romeo to make sure he was really out cold. She brushed his eyelids lightly, like a feather, creating this moment of tenderness and mystery in the air. The next second, Romeo wakes up, totally disoriented, and has no idea how long he's been out. He sees that Jesse's gone, but she left a note saying she'd catch up with him later. Right after the main character reads the note, a new quest pops up telling him he's got to win the trust of 20 elder mages. There was a knock at Romeo's door, and it was Marcel, who wanted to have a chat with the main character. But he was surprised that the adventurer had already figured out the head mage's reason for coming. Marcel's convinced the main guy got stuck with this mission, because the mage himself is a weakling. But Romeo talked the head mage down, saying it wasn't his fault and he shouldn't sweat it. The senior mages are already gathered for the meeting, and they've cooked up a nasty test for our hero. Romeo went up to where the meeting was supposed to be, but at first he didn't see anyone. Turns out, the senior mages had locked the entrance with a third-level sealing spell. Romeo was about to walk away from the spot where the senior mages were hiding, but Romeo's power let him crack the puzzle like it was nothing. All the senior mages were blown away by the main guy's ability. Even Marcel would have needed more time to open that door. Romeo confidently walked into the auditorium where the meeting was supposed to happen. He was furious that the mages dared waste so much of his time on their little power play. The main character, steaming, marched up to one of the elder mages, demanding an explanation. But Romeo was just too wiped out. He fell asleep standing up, freaking the girl out even more. The main character found the strength to keep talking. He said he'd let this slide, just this once, for such disrespect. The other mages were also blown away by Romeo's power. They weren't even sure they could have broken a sealing spell that strong. One of the elder mages remembered hearing about a white-haired kid who'd crashed that recent event uninvited. The girl overheard her colleague, and now she was starting to see why Marcel trusted Romeo. Meanwhile, the main character got back to his office and realized that his recent meeting with the mages had actually earned him the trust of 3 sorcerers. That bummed Romeo out a little, but all he could think about right now was getting some shut-eye. The main character started thinking that, all things considered, this was a pretty decent start. He decided to grab a quick nap, then figure out what to do with the treasures he'd gotten from Yusra Island. Out of nowhere, the main character spots a talking piece of parchment on his desk. Turns out, it's Marcel's voice, using this thing to talk to Romeo. This newfangled magic gadget throws the hero for a loop. He's got no clue how to use it. After a few failed tries, Romeo just chucks the parchment in the trash. But Marcel's not giving up on our guy. He wants to apologize for the older mages being jerks. The mage explains that the other wizards are always trying to one-up each other. That's why they act like that, and they might actually trust Romeo because they're underestimating him. Marcel's last words got James all worked up, because his character's a real sore loser. And sure enough, Romeo's face changes as soon as he hears he's being underestimated. A smile creeps across his face. The adventurer says, with total confidence, that if people underestimate you, you just gotta make them overestimate you. Marcel realizes he was kinda rude to Romeo too, trying to apologize through a piece of paper. so he's planning on paying the main character a visit in person. Romeo tried to stop the head mage, but the guy's dead set on his decision. Right after their talk, our main dude was back to brainstorming how to snag the support of those senior mages for his new quest. Lost in thought, Romeo started casting spells, knowing he's still got a ways to go before he's on par with the big league sorcerers. But then, bam! The main character instantly switched to a totally different kind of magic, like it was nothing. James wasn't impressed with Romeo's antics, calling him a stuck-up, arrogant count. Just then, Marcel rushed into the main character's office, wanting to personally apologize to the adventurer. Romeo's expression changed on a dime. He considered that quick shift another one of his talents. Stepping inside, the head mage noticed a massive residual mana trail left by the main character's magical messing around. Claire came up behind him, equally blown away by the beauty in the room. The other senior mages also wanted to see this amazing display of magic, and they figured Marcel was behind the whole thing. But the head mage started denying the false assumptions, saying Romeo was behind it all. But when Marcel turned to where the main character had been sitting just a moment ago, he found it was already empty. Meanwhile, Romeo was trying to get as far away from that tower as possible, to a place where he could finally chill. But even there, his path was blocked by other wizards who were also stoked about the main character's abilities. They challenged him to solve a riddle that only got harder when magic was used. Romeo solved the puzzle in a split second, using an anti-magic spell, shocking the wizards. The main character calmly walked down the stairs, analyzing the task he'd been given. Turns out 7 mages already trust the con artist. But then reporters blocked Romeo's path, wanting to know everything about what happened on Yusra Island and the guy's opinion on the dispute about his abilities. James also noticed that mages were blocking their path from the other side, wanting to learn more about Romeo's magic. Luckily for him, the main character noticed that a door next to him seemed to come alive. Having no other choice, he just walks right through, leaving everyone in the dark. As our hero passes through the magic, he notices a girl sitting in the office. Romeo remembers seeing her before at a meeting of senior mages, where she was performing her duties. The sorceress is amused by the hero's words about how easily he can control magic. The girl introduces herself as Julia, the head mage of the healer's school, and admits they underestimated Romeo's abilities, thereby increasing the quest completion percentage. Our hero got back home, started reading about the online drama, and realized he couldn't care less. Meanwhile, Romeo kept cleaning up the apartment, still grinding those physical fitness quests. James is stoked to find that the basic quests have seriously boosted his strength and stamina. But he realizes that physical stats alone won't cut it, and it'd be smart to learn a skill that'll be useful in close combat. While James was pondering this, his character, while cooking, miscalculated his strength and sliced right through the table. Romeo nearly trashed the whole apartment along with the table, using magic inside. At the same time, the Berserker Guild was helping rebuild the kingdom of Yusra. Ruby, the guild leader, was watching videos online, and she definitely wasn't enjoying them. She was listening to a live stream where everyone was dissecting the recent events on Yusra Island. After watching a few videos, Ruby got furious that clueless people were picking apart moments from the battle. Her little sister came over to calm her down, noticing Ruby was so upset because everyone was dogpiling on Romeo. The Berserker Guild leader's sister thinks Ruby's got a thing for the main guy, which she totally denies. The adventurers thinking that after completing this mission for the kingdom of Yusra, their relationship will improve. Then she doesn't get why Romeo entrusted such a valuable task to her guild in particular. After resting up at home, the main character decided to visit Yusra Island for his own reasons. He approached the kingdom's border, where soldiers were already stationed, and requested a meeting with the Lionheart commander. The young punk gave our main guy some serious lip, saying he didn't have the authority to set up a meeting with Richard. Luckily for Romeo, King Akuna was nearby and spotted him at the island's entrance. The king was stoked to see his benefactor, and asked what brought him to the kingdom. Romeo explained he was planning to meet with Richard, but apparently needed permission to enter first. King Akuna was surprised by this, since he figured the adventurer had as much right to enter as he did. After the king spoke, the guard let Romeo through and escorted him to the Lionheart commander. Richard didn't expect to see the main character so soon. He asked what he wanted, and Romeo requested to be trained in sword energy. The man just sighed and told Romeo that mastering that technique would take at least 10 years. But our hero wasn't looking for the easy way out. He's confident he can learn it in no time. Richard sensed Romeo was dead serious, so he agreed to help the daredevil. He told his assistant to bring them his sword and the so-called Lion's Oath. The girl got everything ready, so now Romeo stood before a huge iron plate with a lion on it. Richard explained that the relic his assistant brought was made of super tough iron, almost impossible to break. He offered Romeo his own sword, so he could take the Lionheart Oath by adding another mark to the plate. But the main character refused Richard's weapon, saying he couldn't take it. Instead, Romeo went to the rack of practice swords and grabbed one. The main character approached the relic where he needed to make another notch. Romeo unleashed his power and channeled it into the sword to overcome the tough material in one blow. The Knights of the Lionheart were stunned that the main character could pull off such a powerful strike with just a practice sword. Richard was blown away by the potential Romeo had been hiding all this time. He suggested the main character master the basics of swordsmanship first. Edith and Derek, subordinates of the commander, would be his instructors. Romeo was totally down with getting into better shape. Derek was still trying to wrap his head around the main character's power. He couldn't believe what he'd just witnessed. Meanwhile, Edith had already started the training, demonstrating the first sword technique. Romeo had already changed into the Order's training gear and picked up a sword. He started trying to mimic Richard's technique from the recent fight. The main character struck with such force that he messed up his instructor's hair. Commander Lionheart was watching all this, noting with satisfaction that Romeo was even stronger than he'd anticipated. King Akuna, knowing the main character would be here, also came to observe the training. His Highness noticed Romeo's strength, but he couldn't let the main character's lungs get messed up. So Richard immediately ordered his knights to clean up the beach. King Akuna kept going on about how worried he was about the main character, saying it was way too sunny for training. Then the Lionheart commander ordered his knights to make more shade on the beach. Richard was blown away by how seriously the king was taking the training, so he decided to jump in too, to relive his glory days. Edith and Derek were freaking out that they had to train with the commander, because they knew Richard wouldn't let them off easy until they were totally wiped. The Lionheart commander asked Romeo to train with him, and the main character said he was down. The training kept going, but now there was another big shot involved. Meanwhile, in the mage's tower, one of the sorcerers was sitting in his office, buried in paperwork. This guy was a real specimen, long black hair, the head honcho mage at the Magic Academy, Matisse Carl. One of his underlings, the appraiser guy who checked out Romeo's stuff, came to see him. Matisse listened closely. He was blown away that one dude could own so many rare artifacts. It was late, moon shining bright, and training was finally wrapping up. Everyone else crashed to get their energy back, but the main guy was still grinding, doing his daily strength training thing. Suddenly, an owl swoops down and delivers a scroll. Turns out it's Matisse, the head mage, wanting to let our hero know what his items are worth. He breaks down the value of each thing he brought in for appraisal. Romeo says he wants his silk and emerald crystal turned into something useful. Matisse tells him crafting it could cost a fortune. But our hero doesn't care about the price, he just wants the job done right. Romeo figured the conversation was over and crashed, but the sorcerer had another favor to ask, so he left a note for the adventurer. At dawn, Romeo woke up full of pep and ready to go. Like yesterday's long workout never even happened. While jogging, our main guy notices an owl flying towards him again, carrying a scroll. Turns out it's Matisse again, wanting an answer to the note he left, where he asked Romeo to meet him tomorrow in the floating garden. The main character hears the sorcerer out and points out that he didn't see any note, and anyway, he can't make it to the meeting spot at that time. Matisse wasn't expecting a rejection of his offer, so he's a little thrown off right now. However, Romeo finally agrees to meet the sorcerer in 2 days, when he plans to finish his training. The main character changes back into his training gear to continue his studies. Richard approaches him to announce that Romeo has successfully mastered the basics of sword energy control, and he suggests that the main character imbue the sword with aura. Romeo isn't totally confident in his abilities. He's only been training for a day. But still, the main character grabs his new sword and gets into stance. He feels a surge of energy in his body, different from magical power, and he's actually using it. Richard claims that thanks to the main character's hard work, he was able to master a new technique in just 1 day. With fire in his eyes, he asks Romeo to join him on the path of the sword. But the main character isn't planning on stopping with just one technique. He believes he has to forge his own path. Edith had been watching Romeo's abilities the whole time, and now she was bummed that she wasn't as gifted. The girl thinks she's still got a long way to go before she's at the same level as the main character or her commander with their sword aura. But Edith isn't about to give up that easily. She's going to keep training even harder. Her passion is infectious, and now Derek's fired up too. They're going to be pushing forward together. Richard notes with satisfaction that Romeo's presence at training has really boosted the morale of all the knights. The main character's already changed into his suit, and now he's going to practice that new technique on some real enemies. A leopard with a silver mane steps out from the trees, and its level is a whopping 300. Romeo's natural enemy skill activates, and now he's pissed that this monster disrespected him. Meanwhile, in the same forest, Kitch, the leader of the Shadow Mercenaries, was searching for her teammates. She noticed that the adventurer had run into the field boss of Yusra Island, but Kitch isn't planning on helping the main character, because it's actually better for her if the leopard is busy and leaves her team alone. She's heading towards the kingdom of Yusra to keep her promise to the mercenaries. James is terrified that his first opponent in a real fight is going to be such a dangerous monster. The dude's imagining that the second he moves, the leopard's going to tear him to shreds. But Romeo isn't scared at all by the monster standing in front of him. He decides now's the perfect time to show what he's learned. The leopard was a blur, charging straight at the hero, ready to rip him to shreds. James was starting to think this was game over for his character's adventure. But then he noticed something weird about the monster. Romeo fired up his sword aura, just like he practiced in training. Turns out, the leopard was strong, but also kinda slow. So the hero ended the fight with a single sword strike. Romeo tried to act like the fight was a total joke, but James could tell it took a lot out of him. Matisse was already waiting for the hero in the floating garden, right on time. Romeo showed up right on schedule, trying to walk tall, but you could see his body was shaking from exhaustion. The sorcerer introduced himself again, secretly impressed by the hero's power. Romeo returned the courtesy, trying to ignore the ache in his muscles. He remembered that after beating the silver-haired leopard, he'd fought a whole bunch more monsters. Suddenly, Matisse's rings, which react to dark magic, start glowing like crazy from Romeo's presence. This wizard's never seen such an intense violet aura before. It's scary to think what kind of dark history our main guy's hiding. Matisse flashes back to his days as a magic student. Nobody at school respected his interest in dark magic, but the wizard kept practicing like crazy because he wanted to prove the value of this kind of magic to everyone. Eventually, Matisse manages to reanimate a creature's skeleton, and he shows off his results at a magic conference. Everyone was horrified by what the dude had accomplished, except for one person, the dean, who supported the wizard's passion. Matisse was pleasantly surprised that the dean had such a positive reaction to the new magic. The guy asked the wizard what he wanted to call this new field, and the wizard said he'd call it dark magic. But years passed after the new school was founded, and the research just wasn't producing results. Matisse realized he couldn't reach the heights he wanted to in dark magic all by himself. So here's Romeo, standing right in front of the head wizard of the Magic Academy, and his knack for dark magic? It's got the wizard spooked. Our main guy sighs in relief, plopping down at a garden table, and starts asking about Matisse's rings. The wizard happily explains to Romeo that his rings are sensitive to dark magic, helping him gauge someone's potential with that kind of sorcery. Matisse then shows off regular magic, saying it's a power expressed by observing magical activity and then getting involved. In his other hand, the wizard reveals dark magic, which draws on a person's inner darkness. Matisse then brought up all the tough stuff our main guy might have gone through back in the day. But Romeo, after hearing the wizard out, just points out that it's not cool to dig into someone's past the first time you meet them. Matisse immediately got flustered and apologized to the main character for being out of line. Romeo accepts the wizard's apology and gets curious about another type of magic, since dark magic can be used when your mana's tapped out. Matisse latches onto what the main character said and suggests he go down the path of dark magic. The main character was surprised to see that yet another high-ranking mage was acknowledging his skills. But his meeting with Matisse was over, so Romeo headed back to his office, telling the wizard he'd be in touch. Back in his lab, the main character got another magical parchment for a remote chat. These messages were from several senior mages. James was stoked that they'd nailed the task of getting recognition. But his joy was cut short by a sudden in-game notification. A new feature was available. Meanwhile, people were buzzing about the emergence of the new kingdom of Yusra. The head of the Gaon Guild and his brother were watching the livestream, discussing the latest developments. Christoph was grateful to the main character for letting them participate in the kingdom's reconstruction, which boosted them from 5th to 3rd place in the rankings. Jack started reading the comments under the video and saw a message that people were bummed they refused to work with the Myth Guild. Christoph was furious that even here, that clan had bought off the press. In another part of the city, someone was draining the life force from a man. That was Ada, the guild leader of Myth, and right now she's talking to her secretary. At the same time, she's keeping an eye on her new plaything, our main character. She got so worked up she showed her true demon form and decided to head to the Yusra kingdom. Romeo was checking out a new feature when a notification popped up on his phone. His sisters were chatting about their brother's heroic deeds. Out of nowhere, that magic scroll from the tower ends up in his hands again. A bunch of mages immediately wanted Romeo to join their research projects, but our boy wasn't about to get dragged into the magic tower's business, so he bolted out of there. Now he's hanging out with King Akuna, having a nice chat and a cup of tea. His Highness was super amused by Romeo's story about trying to escape the mages on the island for some peace and quiet. Suddenly our main character gets a notification that someone's calling him. That was his sister, and she was not happy about James risking his neck. The other sisters were stoked about the main character's popularity and let him know it. Romeo's cracking under the pressure, so he hangs up, but not before thanking his sisters for their support and concern. King Yusra hooked our main man up with one of the new houses on the island. Romeo got back home, ready to chill, but first he figured he should check the news. Suddenly the main character notices something messed up that really bugs him. Turns out this place is a total dust bunny farm, and Romeo can't stand it. Meanwhile, back at the Gaon Guild's temporary HQ on Yusra Island, Kristoff's trying to figure out why his clan's stocks tanked a few points. He figures it's because of the Myth Guild, the ones he turned down for that partnership thing. While Kristoff was busy cursing out his enemies, Ada snuck up behind him. The Gaon Guild leader didn't spot her right away, and this unexpected meeting wasn't exactly making his day. Jack bolted to find out how their security let Ada slip through. But, bad luck for him, he found all his guys were out cold. This kind of stunt really ticked him off, because this incident could spark a guild war. In response to that, Ada started using her powers, messing with Jack's head. Kristoff jumped in too, demanding she cut the mind games. Meanwhile, Jack was trying to figure out where Ada's power came from. He wanted to warn his brother, but he was totally frozen. The main character was closing in on the Gaon Guild's temporary camp, noticing the unconscious bodies piled up at the entrance. Luckily, Romeo stepped in and managed to defuse the guild squabble when he entered the tent. The main character sensed a demon had popped up on the island, which is why he came here. Romeo plays a video that Ada ordered to be uploaded online and calls the girl a demon. Words like that amuse the guild myth's leader. She's stoked the adventurer came to her, since she originally planned to get intel through the Gaon clan. Ada sidles up to Romeo, turning on the charm to mess with his head. Thing is, our main dude's no pushover, so that stuff doesn't work on him. He shrugs her off like it's nothing. Romeo asks Jack to explain that video he showed him earlier. The guy says it was the Gaon Guild trying to fight back against the bogus rumors that our hero only favors guilds he's tight with. Romeo's all ears, listening to Jack. Meanwhile, Ada's reeling from getting shut down. The girl demands the main character explain why he's dissing her. Romeo's getting ticked too, cause they just barged in and wrecked his talk with Jack. Ada tries to use her succubus powers on our main man again. When the girl touches Romeo, he's surprised when his natural enemy skill kicks in. That's when he figures out she's not entirely human. What saved Ada from being totally exposed was a bunch of bloggers busting into the ward. They'd heard she was on the island. That was Jack's plan playing out, and luckily for him, it caught her completely off guard. Romeo wasn't thrilled about all those bloggers crammed into such a small space either. Ada suggested they head to a more private spot where they could be alone. Romeo shot that down hard, saying he doesn't do unscheduled meetups. He told Ada to brush up on her etiquette before suggesting something like that again. She wasn't expecting to get rejected, it just never happened to her before. People online started tearing into Ada, trashing her perfect woman image. Ada looked up and saw her demonic reflection staring back at her. The succubus offered to help her take care of all those internet trolls. But Ada's trying to fight the part of herself that's been there all along. This girl thinks the demon inside her has only held her back, and it's time to end the suffering. Ada regains control of her body and presses a shard of glass against her throat. The succubus fights back, trying to stop Ada from offing herself, trying to stop the bleeding. The real Ada is finally realizing that everything she's achieved in life wasn't because of the demon, so she doesn't see any point in listening to it anymore. The girl tries even harder to weaken the succubus, so she shoves the glass shard into her gut. She remembers her recent meeting with Romeo and the way he looked right at her. Ada realizes that the main guy is the only person who's ever seen the real her. At the end, he even said goodbye to her, not the demon, promising they'd meet again. The succubus saw Ada's memories too. The demon realized Romeo was to blame for all the changes in the girl's mind. To save its physical form, the succubus reclaims the body and bolts out of the bathroom, where it runs into a security guard. This demon's draining the guy's life force to get his strength back. Later, Romeo's back at his place when he realizes his natural enemy skill is flaring up again. Our hero, filled with resolve, is ready to face this uninvited guest, prepared for whatever's coming. Turns out, it's Ada. She just waltzed into his house through the open window. Romeo was expecting her to use the door, and now he's pissed about her lack of manners. Ada gives a fake apology and then calls him out, saying he basically invited her over. Looking at her, Romeo notices the real Ada's shadow is gone. All that's left is her demonic mask. That's exactly what he asks her about, and she just replies that she's right here. The demon reveals that Ada passed away when she tried to fight back. The succubus spills the tea about Ada's childhood. How she's the illegitimate daughter of the chairman of Manhwa, a huge company in the city. When Ada was 8, everyone found out about her existence through an article online. From then on, the girl was bullied, first in elementary school, then in high school. Everyone thought she was tainted. But when Ada was graduating high school, her mother died. And her father, the chairman of Manhwa, finally acknowledged her. The succubus kept rambling about how the man forced his own kid to work non-stop, when the girl unexpectedly became a player. More than anything, Ada wanted to earn her father's approval, and when her guild became successful, she finally got it. Romeo listened carefully to the succubus's story. The demon's words pissed him off. The look in the main character's eyes, which the demoness saw, made her shut up in fear. Romeo was furious that the succubus dared to talk to him with such disrespect. The demoness was too weak-willed, so she was losing to the main character. Suddenly, James was flooded with someone's jumbled memories, which made him listen more closely to his own senses. The dude was standing in some huge room, decked out with expensive stuff. He spotted Romeo running up to his relatives, showing off his work. Suddenly, James felt a pain in his chest, like someone was squeezing his heart from the inside. The guy realizes he's inside Romeo's mind, only now the kid's all grown up. James is watching Romeo's memories, where everyone he ever loved got wasted. These memories are what kicked off Romeo's life goal, to off every last demon. The succubus was so freaked out by the main character's power, she couldn't even twitch. She suddenly dropped to her knees in front of her enemy, begging for mercy, her voice a tiny whisper in the dark. But instead of icing the demon, Romeo leaned down to the girl, trying to wake up the real Ada. Luckily, he pulls it off, because the next second, a human is looking back at him, not a demon. Romeo wasn't trying to hear Ada's sob story, so once he saw she was okay, he told her straight up to head home. But all that stress made Ada pass right out, and our main man barely caught her in time. Right after all that went down, the Knights of the Lionheart Order came barging in, because they also felt that demonic energy in the player's house. They showed up just as Romeo was laying Ada on the bed, and those knights totally got the wrong idea about what he was up to. The adventurer tried to explain himself to the people barging in, saying he was just tucking the girl in with a blanket, but Edith told Romeo not to even bother explaining himself to them. He's got a right to his privacy. After everyone cleared out of the main character's place, the dude could finally enjoy some peace and quiet, which he seriously needed. But no sooner does the main character plop down on the couch than he gets a notification about a new class quest. Meanwhile, back at the dev headquarters, they get the word that a new area is opening up. The northern city of Frost. That news blew up online and on TV, and everyone started buzzing about it. James is horrified to discover his new class quest involves taking down the Demon King. The dude immediately wanted to blast this news all over the internet, share it with everyone. Meanwhile, Romeo's flashing back to his early days, when he was just starting out as a demon hunter. His mentor hands him a book of all known demon kings, insisting he memorize them all. 'Cause not many survive even a run-in with the weakest one. After dropping the article online, James lost interest. He figured he'd done all he could to get the word out to the players. Some kind of green bird flies into the hero's place, pulling him out of his thoughts. Turns out it's a messenger from the Magic Tower, delivering Romeo's new custom-made gear. First thing the adventurer pulls out of the bag is an emerald ring that restores health when he takes damage. Just then, James remembers Romeo didn't specify a price limit on any of the gear, so he's frantically trying to check his account balance. Next, Romeo pulls out a koi scale scarf that, under certain conditions, helps him avoid damage. And on top of that, unlocks a new stat. Aesthetics. This thing is so shiny, the light filled the whole room, almost waking Ada from her dead sleep. You can't put a price on this scarf, it's worth more than billions. Which is why Romeo's totally digging it. James decided to dump all his free skill points from beating that succubus into leveling up his luck stat. Last thing Romeo pulls out of the bag is a vest from Marcel, and it's a perfect match for the new scarf. The next thing he knows, our hero gets a new notification that's putting his Demon King assassination quest on hold. Meanwhile, back at Inazuma Guild HQ, some dude's getting reamed out for dropping in the rankings. The chairman demands they get the clan's level back where it belongs, and guild leader Trent promises to do everything he can. His plan is to lock down a foothold in the new Frost City location before the other guilds get there first. Trent's ignoring his guys, telling him not to push his luck, saying he'll get ahead of the Gaon Guild no matter what it takes. The adventurer orders the whole guild to assemble in Frost City ASAP. Word's out. All the other guilds got the notification about the new zone opening up, and they're already mobilizing. Frost City's got a ton of shops and blacksmiths, everything you need to grind your skills. Problem is, this new zone popped up right where Hokkaido used to be, and that place was crawling with military hardware. Kristoff from the Gain Guild already made it to the new area, but armed cops are blocking the portal. Jack tried to sort things out, but no passport, no Hokkaido for you. Meanwhile, the Inazuma Guild snuck inside and they're closing in on the city gates. Suddenly the lead scout spots something messed up ahead and halts the whole group. What they see is seriously messed up. The ground's covered in blood and corpses. While the guild members are checking out the new digs, a demon sneaks up behind them and starts chowing down on people. Trent's frozen in terror. He never expected this place to be such a death trap. Flashback a few hours to our main guy's place on Yusra Island. Ada wakes up in bed after a long sleep, totally disoriented. The second she spots Romeo in the room, she jumps right out of bed. Ada sneaks up on our hero, who's been reading the mission brief for a rescue op in Frost City. Romeo was about to head out to the new zone, but he noticed she was awake. Ada wanted to thank her savior, so he was going to offer to cover her tab at the magic tower. But when James opened the envelope, he saw all that stuff was comped. There's another knock at the door, and this time it's Richard. The Knights of the Lionheart are escorting King Akuna. He needs to talk to Romeo. Ada figures she should introduce herself to His Majesty and the commander too, since they haven't met. Everyone greeted the girl back, saying she was even more beautiful in person. The king had a favor to ask of our hero. He wanted him to deal with an arcane who'd snuck illegally onto Yusra Island. Romeo immediately knew Akuna was talking about Ada, who really had infiltrated the kingdom without permission. He requested that, at their next meeting, Mythguild prepare a monetary compensation for the island. The girl was happy she'd get to see our hero again. But the adventurer was already getting ready to leave. Everyone present was shocked that Romeo was rushing off somewhere so quickly. Our hero didn't want to lie to his comrades. He honestly admitted that a demon king was wreaking havoc in Frost City. Kristoff was trying to negotiate with the border guards to let them through to the new area. The Gaon Guild leader was already losing his cool. The adventurer was about to escalate things with the military. But then members of the Radiant Guild showed up. Samuel threatened the military with a global incident, saying their actions violated the player organization's rules. The Shining Guild leader's words worked wonders on the border guards. They started clearing the barricades right away. But Samuel's good mood was wrecked by news about what was going down in Frost City. The Inazuma Guild's defenses were collapsing fast. They couldn't handle the demon onslaught. And finally, the monster cornered Trent, promising him a world of hurt. But lucky for him, the main hero shows up to lend a hand, unleashing his magical powers. Together with Kristoff, he slices the demon in two, saving Trent's life. The adventurer was ready to kick the bucket, but now he's trying to figure out who these guys are who saved him. Trent recognizes Kristoff. He's confused why he helped him, since they were enemies. The Gaon Guild leader tells Trent to thank Romeo for saving his skin. The main hero stands tall on the mountain with the Lionheart Order Knights. On his command, everyone charges into battle against the demons, filled with resolve and fearlessness, ready to fight to the bitter end for their ideals and protect their world from evil. The Knights of the Lionheart were some of the toughest guys in the Arcana Empire. Romeo was pissed that the demons had the nerve to disrespect human pride. Everyone's in awe as their savior shows up, his presence filling their hearts with hope and the belief that good will triumph over evil. Richard's amazed, yet again, at how brave the main guy is, 'cause he ain't scared to go to the nastiest place to help the weak. Meanwhile, Romeo's thinking about how he rushed to Frost City, 'cause the number of survivors on the mission was dropping like flies. Flashback a few hours. King Akuna listened to the main character, asking the adventurer to stay on the island until they could get an army together. The Lionheart commander agreed with the king, 'cause he thought it was a risky move too. But Romeo stuck to his guns. His biggest desire was to make that demon pay. That kind of courage just blows Richard away, filling his heart with pride and respect for the main character's guts and determination. He said he'd follow Romeo to help him take back Frost City. Akuna agreed with the Lionheart commander that it would be safer for the benefactor of Yusra Island that way. But Romeo couldn't let the king's defenses be weakened, so he shot down the idea. Ada was watching this conversation, and she said she'd take care of the kingdom's safety. Akuna agreed with her, so Romeo was free to move out with the Lionheart Order. Trent wants to know from the Gaon Guild leader who the main character is and why he should be grateful to him. Kristoff replies that it was Romeo who insisted that saving the survivors in Frost was the top priority. Trent was devastated that even some two-bit adventurer valued his life and his comrades' lives more than the government of his own country, which sent them here. Romeo noted with satisfaction that the Knights of the Lionheart Order were living up to their reputation as the Empire's strongest, successfully fighting against the demons. The main character decided the battle around Frost City was wrapping up, and it was time to head inside. Gathering his inner strength and focusing, Romeo tapped into his magic. The Shining Guild was closing in on the city too, when Samuel sensed some weird energy. He remembered reading an article online right before they left, something that really grabbed him. It talked about Frost City being home to a demon king, and those were the exact words the main character said coming out of the portal. The blogger was also booking it towards the new location, wanting to get the scoop on this battle. But all the chatter stopped when they spotted the magical residue Romeo left behind from his spell. Everyone was blown away that one guy could create that many water droplets. Romeo, using his magic focused on the elements, froze the castle solid. Jessie was watching the main character's magic too, but all she could think was that this beauty wasn't going to last. With a loud crack, the castle's wooden gates were shattered by the brute force. Everyone involved in the fight got a notification about a new quest. liberate Frost City from the Demon King. Richard was blown away by the main character's skills. He'd never seen such an amazing siege. The Lionheart Order commander said he'd follow Romeo's lead, but the adventurer was getting a bad vibe from the increasing dark energy radiating from the city. Christoph also gave the main character props and was ready to charge right in, but Romeo told him to hold up, because his danger sense was going off like crazy. And sure enough, while Christoph was distracted, a whole swarm of demons poured out of the city walls, each one as nasty as anything they'd faced so far.